Chapter 2016. The Sword Emperor's famous technique, 1 sword 7 kills. The elder of the Lin clan did not dare to underestimate it. With a roar, he opened and closed his palms, and the heavenly wheel of the great path completely exploded. His divine power swept forward like a raging ocean. Immediately after, many dazzling sky-suppressing divine pillars condensed and appeared one after another around Qin Hao, turning into a cage that trapped him in the center. He did not know how much Qin Hao had mastered with the Sword Emperor, but based on his personal feelings, this sword was extremely powerful. Rather than passively defending, it was better to attack directly. Therefore, he decided to attack first. The suffocating pressure of the divine path enveloped them. The huge sky-suppressing divine pillars flashed with light and surrounded Qin Hao like mountains closing in on each other. The pressure grew stronger and stronger. The Lin people had the same life spirit. The power of this elder's superpower was the same as that of the forest seedling. Qin Hao felt that his body was being squeezed and extremely heavy. The gravity penetrated his spiritual soul and seemed to be able to crush everything. Die! The elder of the Lin clan shouted with a serious face. The divine pillars emitted surging divine light. With a loud boom, they merged together. Countless divine pillars gathered into one and buried Qin Hao in an instant. It was as if they were going to kill him. Is he dead? Countless cultivators below watched, and their hearts beat violently. The Lin people had stood tall in Kunlun for tens of thousands of years. The sky-suppressing divine pillars and the divine sun fire were passed down from generation to generation. Both were extremely powerful and were the foundation of the clan. Li Chuji was facing such an attack head-on. Even if he did not die, he would probably be severely injured. Boom! Suddenly, an explosive sound rang through the heavens and the earth. A beam of light split open the middle of the mountain that had gathered together and shot into the sky. The huge mountain cracked inch by inch and was forcefully torn apart by the sword light that shot into the sky. It trembled violently, and countless huge rocks tumbled down. More and more cracks appeared, and there were signs of it collapsing. The elder of the Lin clan's gaze turned cold. His beard danced in the wind, and the celestial wheel on his body shone even brighter. His divine will shrouded the majestic stone mountain. Endless light particles sprinkled over, trying to stabilize it. However, he saw that the sword beam that rushed out of the stone mountain was even fiercer. The violent sword chi overflowed and continuously cut the mountain. The cracks continued to expand. Even if the Lin clan elder tried his best, he still could not suppress the sword beam. Rumble. Amidst the deafening sound of collapsing, the towering stone mountain was split into thousands of pieces, dispersing into countless divine pillars, which were dispersed by Qin Hao's powerful sword intent. Then, the divine pillars continued to shatter and soon disappeared from the sight of countless people. So strong. The cultivators of Kunlun, who were watching the battle below, were shocked to see this scene. Li Chuji had forcefully blasted away the life-spirit divine technique of the elders of the Lin people. His sword was so terrifying. What kind of Tian Luan could do this? No one could clearly see the sky wheel that Qin Hao released under the soaring heaven sword. It was too fast, but one thing was very clear. His sky wheel was definitely stronger than the Lin clan elders. You are the one who will die. Qin Hao's figure slowly appeared, maintaining his previous posture. His finger pointed forward, and the incomparably sharp sword was condensed at the tip of his finger. There seemed to be a heavenly might surrounding him. Then, a ray of light shot out at an indescribable speed, directly piercing through the body of the Lin clan elder. This was a ray of light that contained a terrifying sword will. In the haze, there seemed to be a few shadows hidden in the ray of light, flying to the other side at the same time as the ray of light. Elder, it's dangerous. Lin Xian shouted anxiously. He naturally knew that the shadows that flew along with the sword beam were the Sword Emperor's terrifying 7-killing sword will. However, judging from the number of shadows, Li Chuji had not yet mastered the ultimate sword. He could only use 3 killing moves, one sword with 3 moves. Even so, it was dangerous enough. At this moment, the Lin clan elder also felt a suffocating and dangerous aura. He roared, and the divine power flowing in the sky wheel in his body changed. Surging divine fire poured into his meridians. It was extremely dazzling. It transformed into a divine sun that hung in the air, filled with boundless divine fire chi, not allowing anything to get close. "Break," Qin Hao said coldly, looking at the divine sun in the sky. The sword beam from his finger flew out, piercing directly into the surging flames. Lin people's divine sun fire could not melt this sword will. The sound of a violent collision rang out from the divine sun. It was as if 2 peerless divine swords had clashed. In the next moment, a blood-curdling scream rang out. The divine sun, hanging high in the sky, suddenly collapsed, pierced by a beam of light. Golden blood splattered down from the sky. "Elder!" Lin Xian shouted. At this moment, the divine sword in the Lin clan elder's hand cracked. His messy clothes were stained with blood. His body that was hanging in the air slipped back and was on the verge of falling. He looked forward with a pained expression at the silver-haired youth. The divine sun that he had transformed into couldn't block his opponent's sword will. His clan's divine weapon had also been damaged by his opponent's sword will. Not only that, even his sky wheel. At this moment, countless people in Kunlun saw that a terrifying hole had appeared in the sky wheel that surrounded the Lin clan elder's body. The divine sun fire that covered his chest had been pierced. The shocking bloodstain was like a horrifying hole. It was obviously caused by Li Chuji's sword. His divine body was broken, his divine weapon was damaged, and his sky wheel was pierced. Li Chuji's sword had damaged the foundation of a sky wheel cultivator. Many people knew that this Lin people elder was probably done for. The Lin clan elder spat out a large amount of blood. He clutched the hole in his sky wheel and said in extreme pain, "The Sword Emperor's divine technique lives up to its name." Just now, he had indeed used the divine sun fire to weaken the sword will. With the divine sword in his hand, he was confident that he could block it. Even if he couldn't block it, he wouldn't be seriously injured. But he never expected that his sky wheel would be pierced by Li Chuji's sword. This sword contained 3 moves. He blocked 2, but couldn't block the 3rd move. He had lost. Lin Rui's death wasn't unjust. The Lin clan elder was extremely sad. Even he couldn't withstand Li Chuji's sword. How could Lin Rui block it? Moreover, not only did he lose, but he might also die in battle. There was no turning back in this battle. Sect leader didn't misjudge him. Chu San's future is promising. Divine Lord Taichu had the absolute upper hand. He glanced over and heavily injured the Lin clan elder with 1 sword. He had damaged his sky wheel of the Great Path. The younger generation would surpass the older in time. Taichu also understood that Qin Hao hadn't fully unleashed the ultimate meaning of 1 sword 7 kills. True Dragon Roar, 1 sword 7 kills. These are all top divine techniques of the sword realm of the Great Path. I'm afraid no one in the Lin people can stop him, unless... Someone said, unless the Forest Seedling clan elder intervened. The army of Lin people that Li Chuji had killed was like a ferocious tiger or a flock of sheep. They could wipe out everything. No wonder the Kunlun Sea wanted to protect him. The Zine clan lord would definitely not miss such a genius. At this moment, Lin Xian was heavily protected by many experts from his clan. He witnessed the defeat of the Lin clan elder. Including the battle that broke out at the Kunlun Sea, many of his clan members had been killed by Li Chuji. Today, because of him, his clan members and blood relatives had died tragically at the hands of Qin Hao. All of this had happened because of Lin Xian. If it hadn't been for his arrogance and self-righteousness that had brought about this conflict, so many people wouldn't have died. Lin Xian's feelings were very complicated. There was regret, and there was also endless hatred. He had never thought that he would run into such a tough enemy like Qin Hao when he was casually oppressing someone from the outside world. If he had not stirred up trouble, none of this would have happened. He was the one who had dragged his entire family into this mess. Perhaps Li Chuji was really the disciple of the martial god. At this moment, Lin Xian was a little convinced. However, all of this couldn't be undone. The Lin people couldn't reconcile with Li Chuji. How dare you? In the void, the clan leader of the forest seedling was fighting with Master Lu. His divine consciousness covered the entire battlefield, and he was constantly paying attention to the clan situation. Suddenly, he saw Qin Hao so valiantly injuring the clan elders' Tianluan foundation. He couldn't help but roar in anger. His cold eyes stared at Qin Hao. He had to admit that this was an extraordinary genius. If given more time, Li Chuji would definitely surpass him. If the Lin people had tried to win over such a talent back then, Li Chuji would be standing on the side of the Lin people today. What a pity. How hateful. Qi Shang, send someone to kill Li Chuji, the forest seedling shouted. His tyrannical divine will pass through the divine Chu cauldron and blasted it directly inside. They had to get rid of Li Chuji first. The forest seedling knew very well that the morale of the Kunlun Sea was high, and all of it was on Qin Hao. Killing this person would definitely hurt the morale of Master Lu and the others. If this battle continued, it would be much easier. I also want to, but you have to give me a chance. Get rid of Chuan first. The angry roar of the clan leader of the Qi people came from the incomparably huge divine Chu cauldron. He was already flustered enough, but the forest seedling still dared to order him around. Was the pressure on him that small? Forest seedling, you shouldn't have done this. This time, we've really been muddle-headed. Master Lu sighed slightly. The Lin clan and the Qi clan were the top divine path families in the Tianwu domain. They were very powerful. If they could unite with the Kunlun Sea and do their best to assist Qin Hao, the Kunlun Sea would not have to worry about not reaching the peak again. How magnificent would that be? Unfortunately, the ancestor of the Lin clan was full of ambition. His son, the forest seedling, and his father, Lin Du, were stubborn. That was why this war had happened. Li Chuji had given them too many chances. If only they had been more righteous, they would not have ended up like this. Wrong? What is right or wrong? The strong are always right, and the weak are always wrong. Back then, the Lin clan was in control of the heavenly path. Today, the Kunlun Sea is in the wrong. The forest seedling shouted loudly. He was still very calm. There's no need to say more. Master, you don't think that the Lin people have lost, do you? Just because of Li Chuji. Ha ha ha. The two divine path families in the Kunlun domain had joined forces. Victory or defeat depended on Li Chuji. Was he worthy? Clan leader is right. Even if the old man dies in battle today, I will have no regrets. The elder who had been severely injured by Tianluan held his divine sword and laughed with his head held high. Determination appeared in his eyes. He strode toward Qin Hao. What was there to be afraid of? If one person's death could help the clan achieve great things, his death would be worth it. Stubborn. Qin Hao thought that the Lin people were hopeless. He activated his divine will, and the great void sword turned into a stream of light and flew out. This sword would definitely kill Tianluan. At this moment, in the army of the Qi people, Qizhua looked up at the sky with an anxious expression. It was as if he was waiting for something to come. He was cursing a name in his heart. Why was the promised foreign aid not here yet? If this dragged on, the situation would be extremely disadvantageous to the Lin and Qi clans. At this moment, Qizhua was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He could not calm down. Chapter 2017. Divine Lord Taichu was suppressing Gue Tu. Goddess Su and Lotus Fairy were restraining the two heavenly Luan realm masters of the Qi clan, while Huan Zun and Lu Zun were fighting the only remaining god-level masters of the Lin clan. They had no extra power to stop Qin Hao. In the Qi people's battle formation, the last heavenly Luan realm master remained in the middle. He didn't dare to act rashly because the masters led by Chu Yu and the eldest son of the Chu clan couldn't be underestimated. The battle between clan leader Qi Shang and clan leader Chu was also very fierce. The sound from the Chushan cauldron was like the collapse of the world, and they couldn't help the Lin people at all. At this moment, the Lin people were in a very bad situation, and it seemed like they would be wiped out by Qin Hao. As the severely injured clan leader of the Lin clan once again went to fight Qin Hao, More Nirvana, heavenly emperors began to surround Qin Hao, trying to make up for the lack of quality with quantity. They wanted to use the human wave tactic to kill Qin Hao. Beams of powerful emperor's light interweaved in the air, densely attacking, and the scene was very violent. Qin Hao also made his move. He used the Fleetfoot stride and shuttled through the attacks with a calm expression. Sword will circled around his body as he descended towards a Nirvana, heavenly emperor's square formation. In an instant, sword lights swept out. Popping sounds resounded as the bodies of Nirvana, heavenly emperors fell one after another, their souls extinguished. Below, the cultivators from Kunlun continent who were watching the battle only saw a beam of light flying through the Lin people's battle formation. Everywhere it passed, there would be a rain of blood, and a large number of Nirvana heavenly emperors fell. This made everyone's heart tremble. If this continued, the Lin people would be killed by Li Chuji. At this moment, the body of the clan leader of the Lin clan burned into a big fire, and it was very sacred. Strands of powerful divine source of law poured into the divine sword, nourishing the broken cracks. A sense of vigilance rose in Qin Hao's heart. He turned around and looked in that direction. He saw that the cracks on the divine sword were gradually mending. It was shining with a sword ray that was even more brilliant than before. It was as if an extremely powerful soul had been born, merging the body into the sword. The clan leader of the Lin clan completely disappeared. His aura was completely imprinted on the divine weapon, and he abandoned the body of a god. His divine soul, divine power, and the divine sword had completely merged into one. At this moment, the divine weapon's power was extremely turbulent and shocking. Immediately, the sword, the clan leader of the Lin clan leader of the Lin clan. It was unstoppable, as if it represented the determination of the clan leader of the Lin clan, giving it everything he had. He drew a circle, and created the formation of the Lin people sword. Sword drew a circle in the formation, forming a brilliant sword formation diagram in the sword people. And sword. As. And he. Lin S. Sword. As sword formation sword. It a formation sword to divine sword. Ding. Dang. Intense collisions exploded in the air, as if tens of thousands of swords had met. The divine sword that the clan leader of the Lin clan had thrown into the sword river, continuously withstanding the impact of Qin Hao's sword will. Gradually, the light turned from strong to weak, from weak to dim, until it completely lost its brilliance. Its divine power was completely exhausted by the sword river, and it became an ordinary iron sword. No, Lin Xian cried. What kind of power was this that could cut off the path heart of a celestial will cultivator? Destroy. Qin Hao hit the plain iron sword in the sword river with his palm, which contained the divine power of flames. Vaguely, there seemed to be the wail of an elder before his death. Boom, crack. At this moment, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. The space cracked open, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. A huge pillar of light descended. From the pillar of light, two shadows with powerful auras rushed out, blocking the iron sword that the clan leader of the Lin clan had transformed into. At the same time, a majestic palm print suddenly came from afar, emitting an ancient aura. It heavily crushed Qin Hao's body. Qin Hao was suddenly hit by the palm, and his body immediately flew out, scattering flame particles. Blood flowed from his mouth, dyeing his clothes red. The moment he stabilized his body, he immediately looked in the direction of the attack. At this moment, an elder appeared there, looking down at the world. His aura was boundless. Poof, poof. In front of the sword river that had disappeared, two painful groans sounded. Similarly, two strong figures appeared. However, they were not from the Lin clan, but from the gods from the outside world who had opened up the plane channel. One of them was Qin Hao's old acquaintance, Supreme God Dongbo ancestor. The Lin people looked at the elder standing in the sky, and their eyes flashed with incomparable surprise. Ancestor Lin had come out of seclusion, Although the clan leader of the forest seedling was the leader of the Lin people's real backer was ancestor Lin. Lin Du in the past 10,000 years. There had been countless outstanding figures in Kunlun, but they were gradually forgotten by the world as they lived in seclusion. Lin Du was a super strong master in the same era as Exalted Zihua, but he was born in the wrong era. He was always suppressed by Exalted Zihua, and he couldn't control the way of the heavens. Thus, he was unwilling to retire and handed over the clan's power to the forest seedling. Now that Lin Du had come out of seclusion, his vigorous divine power immediately shocked everyone, making all the god-level masters tremble. The forest seedling, Master Lu, the clan leader of the Qi people, and the clan leader of the Chu clan all sensed the arrival of this terrifying aura. They all stopped fighting, and the Chu divine cauldron was also removed. For a moment, the boundless world was extremely silent, covered by a vast pressure. It was as if everything would be destroyed at any time following Lin Du's every move. Humph! Lin Du glanced at the Lin people. They were so miserable being killed by one person. When he was in charge of the clan, he had never been humiliated like this. The forest seedling had failed him. Buzz! Everyone's mind shook at the same time. With Lin Du's low shout, the qi and blood in the inner mansion tumbled uncontrollably. Even people as strong as Master Lu and Divine Lord Taichu also changed their expressions. Lin Du, you're despicable. Master Lu said angrily to Lin Du. Master Lu roared at Patriarch Lin. How shameless of him to launch a sneak attack on a junior of the divine path, like Qin Hao. Lin Du glanced at Master Lu indifferently, then looked away. He looked down at the world and said in a solemn voice, Zihua has been dead for many years. Kunlun is no longer the era of that time. The way of the heavens should have a new master, and the Kunlun Sea doesn't need to exist anymore. Divine Lord Taichu, Goddess Su, and Lotus Fairy all frowned. Now that they were suppressed by Lin Du's might, they could clearly feel his power. It was vast and endless. Could it be that the heavenly will had changed? This old monster was stronger than before. The Kunlun continent is indeed no longer the Kunlun of the past. My master has indeed fallen, but this Kunlun is not for you to rule. In the distance, the Kunlun sea rippled. A celestial figure in white broke out of the sea. Zine Clan Lord stood above the 9 heavens. His temperament was elegant, and he looked even more like a celestial being. How is it? Xiao Han, Wuk, and Kuang Tong came to Qin Hao's side. They all looked at the bloodstains on his body with concern. It's nothing serious. Qin Hao shook his head slightly. He raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He was attacked suddenly, so he was not prepared. However, looking at the old ancestor of the Lin people, Lin Du's divine power was indeed strong. Currently, even if he controlled the heavenly Tao of Kunlun, it would be difficult for Qin Hao to kill him. The gap between their cultivation was too big. Father, Higashua flew out from the periphery of the battle and came to Divine Lord Dongbai's side. Dongbai covered his chest. Just now, in order to save the Lin clan elder in the Iron Sword, he took Qin Hao's palm head on. He looked a little uncomfortable. Uncle Token, Higashua bowed to a burly middle-aged man beside him. This was a Divine Path elite warrior who came specially from the Dongwang realm. He had a good relationship with his father. Nephew, you are not wronged. Li Chuji is indeed not an ordinary person. Token said. His complexion was somewhat unsightly. Just now, he and Dongbai joined hands, but they were almost sent flying by Li Chuji's palm. They had almost made a fool of themselves. However, this was related to the heavenly Tao suppression. After all, this was not the Dongwang realm. Their divine power was weakened. Dongbai, Token, what are you doing here? Illusion Reverend shouted loudly. As a god who controlled the Dongwang realm, if there was no order from the Divine Lord, they would charge into the outside world to start a war. This crime was not something the two of them could bear. Illusion Reverend, long time no see. I heard nephew Higashua say that you have become someone's lackey. At first, I did not believe it, but now. Token looked at Illusion Reverend and shook his head in disappointment. How about you become my lackey? I guarantee that it will be better than following Li Chuji. Today, Li Chuji will die. Illusion Reverend, you know why we have come here. If you return with us now, I believe the Divine Lord will not punish you severely. At most, you will be demoted. However, it will be better than dying in Kunlun. Supreme God Dongbai said, I'm ashamed to be in the same group as you, spit. Illusion Reverend spat at them. Sectmaster. The figures of Qin Hao and the others flickered as they approached Zine Clanlord. Tai Chu, Master Lu, Lu Zun, Fairy Su, and Fairy Lotus surrounded Zine. Chu San, this is a senior from Kunlun who has cultivated for 10,000 years. His name is Lin Du. Zine Clanlord pointed at Lin Du as a greeting. Junior Li Chuji greets Senior Lin Du. Qin Hao bowed in the air. Lin Du ignored him. Lin Du's action is Kunlun's business. However, I am very curious. Why are friends from Donghuang's realm interfering in Kunlun's business? At this time, Zine Clanlord stared at Dongbai and Token. His eyes were extremely sharp. Crossing the border to start a war was not a joke. Was this under Donghuang's orders? Token didn't dare to look at Zine's eyes. They came quietly this time purely to help Higashua vent her anger and kill Li Chuji. They didn't receive any orders from Donghuang. Clan Lord, we didn't mean to offend Kunlun. We hope you can give us some face and hand over Li Chuji and Huanzun. We will leave immediately. Supreme God Dongbai said. Hand over Li Chuji? Zine Clan Lord's eyes became sharper and sharper. His aura also became stronger as his emotions changed. Are you too worthy? Two little Tianlun disciples under Donghuang dared to come to the Kunlun Sea and behave atrociously. Even if Donghuang came in person, he would never talk to Zine like that. His father, Donghuang, was a great god who was on the same level as Donghuang. How could two little Tianlun disciples dare to talk to him like that? Clan Lord, please allow me to say a few words to them. Qin Hao said. He took a few steps forward and looked at Donghuang's team. His eyes fell on Higashua and said, Do you still want to kill me? Higashua didn't answer. The murderous intent in his cold eyes was clear at a glance. Haha, I thought the god of the East would teach you a lesson when he exiled you. It seems that you didn't. Then, does Prince Lu know what you are doing now? Qin Hao had never taken Higashua seriously. Even now, he was not qualified. However, Higashua secretly contacted the Lin people and Qi people to kill him here. Was he instructed by Lu Qiu? Supreme Godly, my prince is in seclusion with Prince Longmo on the Enchanted Island. This matter was done by Higashua alone. At this time, a sword god with a powerful aura in the distance stood out and said, The battle between the three aristocratic families and the Kunlun Sea was naturally eye-catching. Basically, all the strong cultivators of the continent were gathered here. The people of Rikujinji and Zhenlong Sword Realm didn't leave, so they watched the battle from a distance. They didn't expect Higashua to do such a thing. He summoned the strong cultivators of the divine path from Donghuang's realm to come and help the Lin and Qi families. Qin Hao nodded. It seemed that Lu Qiu really didn't know about this. Perhaps from the beginning, Higashua had used some method to send the news back to Donghuang's realm, leading Dongbai and Token to come to the Kunlun continent. In that case, I will kill Higashua today. I hope Prince Lu and our friends from Rikujinji won't interfere. Qin Hao said coldly. Whether it was Lin Xian or Higashua, he couldn't bear it any longer. The sword god from Rikujinji hesitated for a few seconds, then nodded. Higashua followed Prince Lu Qiu and had some connections with Rikujinji. However, looking at the situation today, Li Chuji was bound to kill Higashua. Since everything was decided by Higashua, he should bear the responsibility alone. After all, the Kunlun Sea was under the protection of the god of Tianwu. Once the god of Tianwu was angry, it would definitely lead to a war between realms. The Rikujinji would definitely not take the blame. In addition, Prince Lu Qiu seemed to be very friendly to Li Chuji. This was also noticed by the sword god from Rikujinji. Chapter 2018. Qin Hao calmed down after hearing the response of the Rikujinji god of sword. Lu Qiu had a very high status as the son of the divine master. If Higashiwa's actions were approved by Lucio, the situation would not be good. It would be extremely disadvantageous for the Kunlun Sea because the cultivators of Rikujinji were still there. Lucio himself was also very powerful. For now, Qinhao could not afford to offend such a force. Higashiwa, today, I can't let you live. Qinhao stared there and attacked again. The first person he wanted to kill was Higashiwa. Senior Lindu is here. It's not certain who can't live. Higashiwa said with his head held high. He was very confident about his safety. Since you're all here, please show yourselves. The position of the heavenly path has been vacant for 10,000 years. It's time for the Kunlun Sea to have a final result. Zine Clan Lord said loudly to the void. As soon as he finished speaking, a few powerful figures appeared in the space again. Their auras were not much weaker than Lindu's. Chizu, Ancestor Chu, Master of the Divine Master. Looking at the figures of the older generation, Lotus Fairy's heart trembled. The three of them and Lindu were all cultivators from the era of the Supreme Venerables. They had witnessed the glory of Kunlun and the rise and fall of the Kunlun Sea. At this time, they were all here. Indeed, the position has been vacant for many years. It's time for a result. Chizu's white beard fluttered in the wind. He stood in front of the Chi people with his hands behind his back. Zine Clan Lord looked over and said, Senior Chi, who do you think should be in charge of the heavenly path? No matter who is in charge, the Kunlun Sea is no longer suitable. Chizu said coldly. Zine Clan Lord sneered and nodded silently. Chizu's words were enough to see his position. He had the same goal as Lindu. What about the two seniors? Sect Master Zine asked the Divine Mill Lord and Patriarch Chu. The ownership of the heavenly Tao is determined by the will of the heavens. I will follow the will of the heavens. The Lord of the Divine Workshop looked like a middle-aged man. He exuded a transcendent aura. He would not help anyone in this battle. He stood on the side of the heavenly law. Whoever took control of the heavenly law would be recognized by him. All right. Zine Clan Lord was very satisfied with the owner's answer. Chu Ancestor stood in front of the Chu army and fell into silence. Father. Chuan was about to speak when Chu Zu waved his hand and interrupted Chu Clan leader. He transmitted his voice, just keep watching. Grandpa, I've already acknowledged Divine Venerably as my master. How can the family stand by and do nothing when my master is in trouble? Chu Ning said anxiously. She hadn't expected that Chu Ancestor would go against the will of the clan at such a critical moment and choose to observe silently. That's your own business. If you want to fight, then so be it. Ancestor Chu exuded a dignified aura that left no room for doubt. When Chu Ning saw Ancestor Chu's attitude, he was so anxious that his eyes turned red. He was about to cry on the spot. Sigh. Chu sighed slightly and waved his hand at the strong cultivators of the family, indicating that they should temporarily withdraw from the battle. Ancestor Chu had lived for 10,000 years and had seen too many storms. Many things could change in an instant. If he was careless and made a mistake, he would be doomed eternally. Therefore, he did not interrupt the battle and chose to observe quietly like the owner of the Divine Workshop. From the perspective of the overall situation of the family, Ancestor Chu was not wrong. Unfortunately, because of this, he might miss some opportunities. At this moment, Chu knew that Ancestor Chu had missed something, but he didn't say anything. Even he hadn't seen what happened to Li Chuji with his own eyes. Even if he said it, how could Ancestor Chu believe him? Chu clan, are you trying to set me up? Divine Venerable Tai Chu questioned loudly. The family had sent out all their strong cultivators, but they stopped halfway through the battle. It was ridiculous. This battle was not approved by the old man. It was all decided by the younger generation. If the heavenly law chooses to stand on the side of the Kunlun Sea, the old man should respect the heavens like the owner of the Divine Workshop. Ancestor Chu replied, Chuan, is this what you get for bringing your family here? Divine Venerable Taichu pointed at Clan Leader Chu. Clan Leader Chu said helplessly, Taichu, I'm sorry. Master, I'm sorry. Chu Ning wanted to apologize, but there was nothing he could do. He was suppressed by the elders of the family and couldn't even lift his head. Qin Hao seemed to have sensed Chu Ning's feelings and looked over. Chu Ning lowered his head and was too ashamed to face anyone. He couldn't help but shout, "Chu Ning, just stand there and watch. If Master can't even handle this kind of situation, he doesn't deserve to be the master of the third miss of the Chu clan. No matter what, everything that happened today can't sever our master-disciple relationship." Chu Ning heard Qin Hao's words and felt even more guilty. He clenched his fists and trembled. "Good job, masterly. Chu Yu, have a whole new level of respect for you. That's right. Qi people and Lin people have nothing to fear. Just kill them. After this battle, Chu Yu, will treat you to a drink." Ha ha ha. The second son of the Chu clan held his spear and laughed. Li Chuji was a magnanimous person. "Shut up." Chu Zu glared at Chu Yu. He was so angry that his face was trembling. Wasn't he afraid that losing to Lin Du in the Kunlun Sea would anger old Lin? All right, let's see where the way of heaven belongs to. It's just 1 against 2. To be honest, Master once warned me not to easily reveal my strength to the outside world. Now that Master has passed away, it's time for me to clear the name of Kunlun Sea. Also, let me tell you a secret. Zihua is my father. Xin clan lord took a step forward and crossed the void. He appeared in front of Lin Du. He flipped his palm, and endless divine light covered the Kunlun Sea. At this moment, the vast Kunlun Sea surged, rolling up tens of thousands of waves. The sea water was divided, and countless mountains and the bottom of the sea rose into the air. It was like a divine mountain was bombarding towards Lin Du. Countless people looked at this shocking scene. The stone mountain that flew out from the bottom of the Kunlun Sea flashed with majestic divine might. It faintly contained the power of the heavenly path. The eyes of the Lord of the Divine Workshop and Chu Zu flashed. Naturally, they also felt the pressure of the heavenly path. The Kunlun Sea was cultivated by Zihua Exalted. The heavenly path of the former master of the heavenly path naturally contained the heavenly path. No wonder Xin was so calm. He had the advantage of the heavenly path, even when facing the Lin and Qi clan patriarchs. The endless mountains and seas bombarded, and the heavenly path pressed down. At this moment, Lin Du and Qi Zu's bodies emitted enormous divine light. Their surging divine power was above that of the forest seedling and the Qi people. They shouted at the same time and pressed down with their palms, trying to destroy the mountains and seas. Kill! As soon as the Xin clan lord moved, Qin Hao immediately attacked in the direction of Higashiwa. His body was surrounded by sword intent, and he was like a huge sword shadow. His aura was even stronger than when he attacked the Lin people's army. "Stop him!" Dongbai and Token shouted and released their heavenly path divine wheels. A vast power surged in the void, causing the space to become denser and denser, as if it was about to solidify. It was the space divine power that Dongwang was good at as a world god. Bang! 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 Violent sounds kept spreading. Supreme God Taichu, Master Lu, Fairy Su, and the others all attacked the heavenly path experts of the Lin and Qi clans. However, without the help of the Chu clan, and with the help of Dongbai and Token, the heavenly path experts were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. Master is my disciple, so I should protect him. Since Grandpa is so heartless, you don't have to care about my matters in the future. Chu Ning saw that the experts of Dan Mountain were surrounded by the two clans. He flew out of his clan's formation and rushed over, instantly falling into the battle. "Good sister, your master will be protected by you, but my sister will be protected by her elder brother. Brother will accompany you. Chu, you seem to be a natural troublemaker." His body was like a white dragon leaping into the sky, turning into a sharp spear light that swept out. Many Qi people who were caught off guard died under this spear light. Qishan clan lord couldn't help but shout in anger. "My son has grown up and can't be controlled. If you want to kill him, then do as you wish." Clan Lord Chu simply didn't care. He even took out a bottle of wine from his sleeve in front of the clan's old ancestor and drank it in the sky to watch the battle. "You really don't care? Fine. Then I'll let the Qi people kill all the descendants of the Chu clan, and see if the old ancestor cares. Unfilial son, unfilial son. Ancestor Chu was so angry that he couldn't control himself. He pointed at Chu, one who was drinking and couldn't say anything. His eyes were fixed on Chu Yu and Chu Ning, who were trapped in a battle. The divine light on his body flickered, and he felt like he couldn't control himself. Fine, I'll kill your son. Qi Shang took a big step, and his figure descended in front of Chu Yu. He bombarded Chu Yu with divine fire. After all, the people Chu Yu killed were the Nirvana emperors of the Qi people, the mainstays of the clan. Ancestor Chu witnessed this scene and clenched his fists tightly. He closed his eyes, then immediately opened them and closed them again. The cycle repeated. Every time he opened his eyes, he saw Chu Yu in danger under Qi Shang's divine fire. His body trembled more and more violently. On the side, clan leader Chu drank his wine leisurely, as if he had really thrown his son's life and death to the back of his mind. Although he was very nervous in his heart. Boom, boom, boom. A series of violent roars kept exploding in front of Higashiwa. There was a divine sword piercing towards him. It seemed to have pierced through countless iron walls. Although the speed of the sword was blocked, it didn't reverse the sword's momentum. It was still coming towards him, getting closer and closer. How can he be so strong? Isn't he suppressed by Kunlun's heavenly Tao? Token's heavenly wheel was extremely bright. He gathered his strength to condense the space. He felt as if Qin Hao's sword had pierced into his body and was crushing towards his heart. Dong Bai's situation wasn't good either. They came from Dong Wang's realm. Kunlun's heavenly Tao didn't have any attributes. Just like what happened to Huan Zun before, they were using their own spatial divine power. Every bit of divine power they used was a portion, and they couldn't replenish it from Kunlun's heavenly Tao. Father, Uncle Token, hold on. Higashiwa shrank behind the two. Seeing Qin Hao's sword light approaching, his face was faintly pale. In this situation, the two heavenly wheel experts couldn't stop Li Chuji. Once Qin Hao broke through his defense, his life would be in danger. Lin people, help me. God Dongbai shouted towards the forest seedling. Facing Qin Hao's sword intent head-on, he felt a stabbing pain in his palms, as if they would be pierced through at any time. His heavenly wheel was suppressed too much by the heavenly Tao, and he couldn't display 70% of the battle strength of Dong Wang's realm. Moreover, the situation was getting worse. With the loss of divine power, he wouldn't be able to display 60% of his strength. Madman Dai. In the distance, Patriarch Lin Yang let out a roar and descended. His fist surged with surging light particles as he blasted it toward Qin Hao. A tyrannical fist radiance blasted out. Roar! A huge divine dragon phantom appeared and rose from the flying divine sword. It was as if Qin Hao's soul had left his body. It transformed into a huge fire dragon wrapped in raging flames and roared towards the forest seedling. Chapter 2019. The true dragon's roar surged and attacked Lin Yang's divine soul, causing him to sink into the sound wave's devastation. His entire body's qi and blood flowed in the opposite direction, and his consciousness was in a mess. However, he quickly regained his consciousness, and his fist light still landed on the divine sword, causing Qin Hao to retreat. This removed the pressure on Dong Bai and Qin Hao, allowing Dong Bai to take a breath. Forest Seedling stared coldly at Qin Hao. His long hair danced in the wind, and the light in his eyes was terrifying. The true dragon's roar lingered in his ears, and his aura fluctuated. If not for his cultivation being stronger, it would have been difficult to escape from the sound waves. Thank you for your help, Chief Lin, Dong Bai said. Forest Seedling ignored him and rushed forward. He grabbed at the void, and his bright divine power condensed into many divine pillars that bombarded Qin Hao. Qin Hao glanced at the chaotic battle. Master Lu and the others were fighting against the Heaven Wheel experts of the two clans, and it would be difficult for them to rush here. Next, he had to rely on himself. Buzz. Divine light radiated. On Qin Hao's body, a dazzling heaven wheel bloomed. Divine power flowed everywhere, forming a universe of its own. When this aura appeared, it instantly attracted the attention of countless people. In the midst of the battle, everyone looked over, and their eyes were filled with shock. This is a perfect heaven wheel. Qishang clan leader stopped attacking Chuyu, and his voice was trembling. Forest Seedling was also stunned. Looking at the heaven wheel around Qin Hao, he seemed to have lost his soul. Blood-red divine power extended to every part of Qin Hao's body like veins. It almost covered his entire body, and there was no gap or gap. Along with this, Qin Hao's aura was the same. It was flawless, and the divine will that filled the air was like an independent world of the Great Path. Impossible. How could he forge a perfect heaven wheel? Divine Master Gue, too, said in a trembling voice. His legs were shaking. The perfect heavenly wheel, also known as the Divine King Grade, was the symbol of a divine king powerhouse. In the future, Li Chuji would have the opportunity to become the king of gods that ruled the myriad of worlds, surpassing even the divine masters. Gue, too, wasn't the only one who didn't quite believe it. Everyone here had a doubtful attitude. They weren't doubting Qin Hao, but doubting whether they were hallucinating. However, when they saw Qin Hao shatter the Forest Seedling's heaven-suppressing divine pillar with a single punch, the doubts in everyone's hearts were dispelled. Divine King level Tianlun, that kid is indeed. Ha ha ha. Master Lu laughed heartily, but his laughter revealed endless sadness. Zihua had spent his entire life, but because of his own limitations, he was unable to achieve his dream of changing Kunlun. In the end, he died in a foreign land. Today, Li Chuji's birth would continue Zihua's long-cherished wish and allow Kunlun to nurture its own Shinto. Everything seemed to be destined. Li Chuji came for Kunlun. Boom! Crack! The Tianlun circled around, and a heavenly might that suppressed all living things descended, falling on Qin Hao's body, making him infinitely imposing. The divine light he emitted became even more dazzling, as if he was the ruler of the heavenly path who controlled all living things. At this moment, no one doubted his Tianlun anymore, including Lin Du, Qi Zhu, Chu Zhu, and the Lord of the Divine Workshop. They all felt the pressure of the will of the heavenly path. Kill! Qin Hao's silver hair fluttered in the wind as he rushed toward the Forest Seedling. Balls of golden divine light continued to erupt from the major acupoints all over his body. In the void, a huge and boundless phantom of the fighting god descended and enveloped his body. At this time, Qin Hao's will of the way and the heavenly might that he emitted had reached an unprecedented level of power. It made the Forest Seedling's heart tremble violently. However, in this battle, no one had a way out. Kill! The Forest Seedling didn't escape, nor was he afraid. He stepped toward the mighty fighting god and formed a spell with his palms. He transformed into a vast divine sun, intending to burn and kill the fighting god. On the other side, the Xin clan lord was fighting against two patriarchs of the Lin clan and the Qi people. He wasn't at a disadvantage at all. In that area, mountains and seas soared into the sky. Turbulent waves rolled up huge divine mountains and smashed toward the two super powerful figures. Although many of them were destroyed by the palm prints of Lin Du and the Qi people, their attacks didn't stop. They continued to attack. Could this be the will of the heavens? Lin Du smiled sadly. He felt the heavenly might from Qin Hao in the distance. The thing that he tried so hard to obtain didn't belong to him in the end. First, it was Zihua Supreme, and now it was Li Chuji who took over as the ruler of the heavenly path. Why? Why didn't the will of the heavenly path belong to the Lin clan? After all, Li Chuji was an outsider. The Lin people were born in the Kunlun heavenly path, but weren't recognized by the heavenly path. Why would it choose an outsider? Perhaps this was the power of the divine, king-level heavenly wheel. Rather than the will of the heavens, it was better to say that it was natural selection. In comparison, Li Chuji had better conditions and was more suitable to control the heavenly path. Even so, the old man must go against the heavens and step on the heavens. Lin Du's eyes flashed with madness. Endless divine sun fire rolled and spread, turning into a great path fire domain. He wouldn't bow down till he Chuji and Zine, let alone admit defeat. Boom! The fire domain swallowed everything. The mountains and seas were destroyed and evaporated. It enveloped the Zine clan lord and Chizu. Then, this fire domain radiated toward the boundless world. Whether it was the Kunlun Sea or the three clans, it swallowed everything indiscriminately. Lindu, are you crazy? Chizu roared. Lindu laughed coldly. The divine power he released became more and more violent. He completely ignored the Lin people in the battle circle, let alone the Chi people. Your courage is commendable, but you are not qualified to burn your boats and destroy everything. As soon as the Zine clan lord finished speaking, there was a rustling sound outside the fire domain. It was as if many things had broken in. Soon, the first thing that appeared was an incomparably huge vine. It was like the giant roots of a heavenly divine tree. It tore a hole in the fiery domain and pierced in. Moreover, there was more than one. The densely packed giant vines swept out crazily, covering the sky and the sun. They pierced out from the Kunlun Sea. Each giant vine contained the divine power of the heavenly Tao. It was like a green ocean. Wherever it passed, the fiery domain was destroyed. Then, these vines swept wildly around Lin Du's body and pinned him to death in the air. These are the heavenly pool, divine water, and the flower queen. Chizu sensed it. As the fire domain continued to weaken, a tiny figure like a flying fairy finally appeared beside Zine. It flapped a pair of green wings and had a white divine lotus on its head. It was the heavenly pool flower queen. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Lindu's eyes were filled with blood. His body was entangled by the lotus vines. He struggled hysterically and stared at the heavenly pool flower queen. It was originally a demon that Zi Hua had planted before. It was as small as a speck of dust. Now it had become an extremely powerful demon god. It's over. Lindu is probably going to lose. Many people saw this scene and had a bad feeling. The heavenly pool flower queen was the symbol of the Kunlun Sea. It had listened to the teachings of the Lord since it was young and had learned all the skills of the Lord. Moreover, it grew in the Kunlun Sea. The Kunlun Sea was refined by the Lord and contained the power of the heavenly path. In other words, this flower demon was a part of the heavenly path. It could even extinguish Lin Du's divine fire. One could imagine how powerful her demon god power was. Moreover, Zine clan lord didn't seem to have used his full strength yet. At this moment, the strong cultivators of the Lin people turned pale. They were extremely nervous. Once the patriarch was killed by Zine and the flower demon, what would happen to the Lin people? What awaited them was undoubtedly a catastrophe. At this moment, Chizu was also secretly trembling. He and Lin Du didn't expect Zine, who had never shown himself, to be so powerful. They also didn't expect that the flower demon in the heavenly pool would become a demon god after absorbing the power of the heavenly path. In this case, there would be one more Tianluan in the Kunlun Sea. Lindu, your time is up. Zine clan lord said coldly. Flower, send him on his way. The flower emperor's elf-like laughter sounded. The flower demon and Zine were telepathically connected. Under the activation of the demon god power, the lotus vines that bound Lin Du's body were like thousands of divine pythons. They grew stronger and stronger, as if they could destroy everything. Soon, everyone heard a scream from the void. The sound jumped out from their souls. Everyone's body and mind trembled. At this moment, it was as if the outcome was already decided. I can't accept this. I can't accept this. Lin Du was trapped in the dense lotus vines. His screams grew weaker and weaker. Not only did the vines bind his body, but they also suppressed his divine soul. It was as if he was pierced by the flower demon's demonic power. He knew that he wasn't defeated by a flower demon. In fact, he was defeated by Zihua Exalted. The flower demon suppressed him with the power of the Kunlun heavenly path. It was as if everything that happened today was calculated by Zihua 10,000 years ago. Lindu was extremely sad. The first day of his comeback was actually the last day. Why? Lin Xian watched as the elder's body became more and more shriveled. He was trapped in thousands of vines. It was as if his divine power was being absorbed by the flower demon. It was ridiculous. Not long ago, when Lin Du appeared, Lin Xian felt that the elder was extremely great. It was as if the Lin family had become the absolute ruler of Kunlun at that moment. But now, the situation was changing rapidly. The powerful elder was on the verge of death. This was the fate of the Lin people. At this moment, Lin Xian was extremely sad. He was once a descendant of one of the three great families of the Divine Path in Kunlun. He was the most competitive young master of the Lin people. He had a prominent background. In order to participate in this Kunlun Sea meet, he had made sufficient preparations and even recruited Qingzun, a rare heavenly wheel expert. However, after the meeting at the Divine Workshop, Li Chuji made him lose Qingzun and Lin Rue. The elites of the generation who accompanied him all died at the hands of Li Chuji. Now, the entire Lin family was about to meet its end. Hearing the scream of the elder in the vines, Lin Xian's heart turned cold. His face was as pale as ashes. All this was caused by one sentence. "It's your honor to follow me." Now, it seemed that Qin Hao was not worthy of following him. Bang! A tragic explosion sounded between heaven and earth. This loud sound seemed to have shattered the hearts of all the Lin people. The vines broke one by one. Lin Du, who was trapped in the vines, was swept by Zine clan lord and turned into dust. A powerful expert who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years no longer existed. This announced that the Lin people had withdrawn from the stage of the heavenly path in Kunlun. No, countless Lin people looked up to the sky and cried. This battle was over. Divine Workshop Master, Senior Chu, is it still not time for the two of you to decide? After Zine killed Lin Du, he looked in a direction. There, the Divine Workshop Master looked at Qin Hao, who was possessed by the battle god. He felt the perfect aura of the heavenly wheel. Suddenly, his figure disappeared. Almost at the same time, Chizu's expression changed drastically. He felt the divine will of the Divine Workshop Master coming towards him. He couldn't help but say to Zine righteously, "The old man was enduring humiliation by associating with Lin Du. I pretended to be perfunctory and wanted to let Lin Du reveal his foxtail. I wanted to see who was disloyal to Kunlun. Now, it's time to prove my innocence. The old man is willing to respect the Kunlun Sea as the heavenly path and control the sect. He will listen to the orders of the god of Kunlun, Li Chuji." "Chizu, are you joking?" Zine clan lord said coldly. Chapter 2020. Endure humiliation? How could Chizu say something like that? Since the Supreme Divinity Zine doesn't believe me, the old man will use my actions to prove my innocence. Chizu rushed out and landed on the top of the forest seedling's head before the owner arrived. The forest seedling was fighting fiercely with Qin Hao. The 9-Palace Battle Deity formula was activated and the fighting divine body was forged. Under the operation of the Sky Wheel, Qin Hao's strength was greatly enhanced. He was already able to withstand the forest seedling's attacks head-on. At this time, the two of them were fighting fiercely. The sky's suppressing divine pillars roared and flew in the void, constantly colliding with the huge battle deity. Qin Hao, who was possessed by the battle deity, punched out with every punch. Even though the forest seedling's divine strength was profound, it was difficult for one side to suppress the other in a short period of time. Suddenly, Chizu landed on the top of the forest seedling's head. His body was flowing with the sky wheel's divine light. When this vigorous and majestic pressure appeared, the light released by the forest seedling immediately dimmed. Chizu had 10,000 years of cultivation and divine strength. He was an expert at the same level as Lin Du. How could the forest seedling be his opponent? Run! Let's save as many as we can. The leader of the forest seedling roared and turned into a huge divine sundae. He released tens of thousands of divine sun flames and bombarded Qin Hao. Even if he died, he would drag Li Chuji with him. "Evil creature, die!" Chizu spat out an incomparably majestic voice. His sky hand covered the sky and turned into a sky-covering palm print. Monstrous divine strength blasted out and crushed the divine sunboom. An earth-shattering roar reverberated through the air. Violent shock waves swept out, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. The divine sun that the forest seedling had transformed into was struck by Chi-Zu's powerful palm. Its divine fire suddenly collapsed, revealing its true form. It raised its hands high and gritted its teeth as it held on. The sky wheel on its body was released to its limits, but it was gradually unable to withstand Chi-Zu's attack. With a series of cracking sounds, cracks continuously appeared on its sky wheel until it finally shattered. Along with the body of the forest seedling, it turned into a bubble of light under Chi-Zu's palm. Countless Lin people watched this scene in agony. They were heartbroken, but even more people were running for their lives. The Lin people had been completely defeated in this battle. They could no longer establish themselves in Kunlun. The two remaining sky wheel cultivators among the Lin people roared and rushed toward Chi-Zu. They abandoned Master Lu and the other opponents and wanted to avenge their leader. In reality, they also knew that it was impossible for them to avenge their leader. Chi-Zu was a 10,000-year-old monster and was not a match for their little sky wheel cultivators. They only wanted to delay him for a while. Maybe some of their people would be lucky enough to escape with their lives. Although the Kunlun Sea was strong and magnanimous, the Qi clan was sanctimonious and changed sides at the last minute. They wanted to exchange the destruction of the Lin people for the survival of the Qi people. If Chi-Zu attacked, he would definitely kill all of the Lin people. Many Nirvana emperors of the Lin people rose into the air. They used ritual implements and escaped into the void. They wanted to escape through the plain passage, but it was already too late. In the sky, Chi-Zu was like a god of destruction. He struck out with both palms at the same time, spitting out towering divine flames. He directly burned the remaining two sky wheel cultivators of the Lin people to death. Chi-Zu's majestic eyes looked down below. His divine consciousness covered everything. A flaming serpent appeared behind him. Golden scales fell off from the serpent's body and scattered downward. These scales seemed to have grown eyes and flew toward the Lin people. Anyone who came into contact with them was immediately turned into ashes. The sky was filled with flames. This part of the sky was burning. Lin Xian's body was falling. The Nirvana Emperor who had protected him was long gone. At this moment, it was as if he was falling from the sky to hell. He witnessed the tragedy of the Lin people. No one could escape. Under the cover of Chi-Zu's divine flames, everyone in the clan was turned into ashes. Then, a golden scale of the divine serpent floated down and landed on Lin Xian's body. He was also turned into flames. Before he died, he looked toward Qin Hao. He sadly realized that Qin Hao seemed to have forgotten about his existence. He did not even look at him. Perhaps it was just as Qin Hao had said. Lin Xian did not care about the importance of the matter at all. He just did not want the Lin people to destroy their own foundation. He tried to give the Lin people a chance. Unfortunately, at that time, everyone thought that Qin Hao was spouting nonsense and saw him as a joke. Gradually, the flames in the sky disappeared. There were no longer any Lin people in the world. One of the three giants of Kunlun had become a thing of the past in an instant. Pitiful, so pitiful. The Lin people are indeed pitiful. However, Chi-Zu is even more ruthless. He turned against them without any hesitation. Chi-Zu is a smart person. The Lin people were killed by Zine Clanlord. If he does not bow down, he will definitely be suppressed by the boss and Chu ancestor. At that time, the Qi people will end up like the Lin people. What he is doing now is just to protect himself. Countless people witnessed the entire process. This day was a huge change in Kunlun. Supreme Divinity Zine, the traitors of Kunlun have been killed by the old man. The Qi clan was not the mastermind of today's incident. Everything was just an act to cooperate with Lin Du in my heart. Kunlun has only one overlord from the beginning to the end, and that is the Kunlun Sea. If you still want to kill the Qi clan to consolidate your position in the sect, the old man has nothing to say. You can do it now. After Chi killed all the Lin people, he immediately dispersed the sky wheel and did not resist. If the Xin clan lord questioned the extermination of the Chi people, according to the current situation, it was useless to resist. Since Senior Chi is so righteous, I am also willing to give the Qi clan a chance. From now on, you should unite with Kunlun and not rebel anymore. Otherwise, the Lin people will end up like the Qi people tomorrow. Qin Hao glanced at Qi Zhu and said, Junior 3. The Xin clan lord shook his head at Qin Hao. Everyone could see that Qi Zhu was forced to do this. He was not righteous. Senior brother, since I can give the Lin clan a chance when I take over the heavenly path, I should also give the Qi clan a chance to survive. Qin Hao said telepathically. Xin sighed softly and said, up to you. Their positions were different, and the way they looked at everything was different. Ziyin's responsibility was to protect the Kunlun Sea and assist his father's successor. Qin Hao, on the other hand, was the ruler of the heavenly Tao and had to treat all living things equally. Thank you, Supreme Divinity Li. Countless Qi people bowed gratefully. Huh? Still not changing your words? Supreme Divinity Taichu snorted. Thank you, God of Kunlun. Everyone from the Qi clan bowed. Qin Hao nodded. After the Lin people were destroyed, he felt that the will of the heavenly path in Kunlun had become more stable. The power of the heavenly path also became stronger. He knew that this was because the flaws of the heavenly path had been removed. However, things were not over yet. At this moment, Qin Hao looked at the team from the Dongwang realm, and his eyes fell on Higashua. Higashua immediately trembled when she saw Qin Hao's eyes. Father, Uncle Token, don't let him kill me. Higashua was terrified and tried to hide under Supreme Divinity Dongbo's robe. At this moment, Supreme Divinity Dongbo and Token were extremely cautious. Their hearts were tense, as if they were facing a powerful enemy. The Lin people were finished. How were they going to escape? The people from the Dongwang realm interfered in the Tianhou realm. Can I assume that the Dongwang realm wants to start a realm war? Qin Hao said coldly. According to the rules of the Eldritch world, they could be punished for the crime of realm war. Xin clan lord said, Heavenly will experts could cross the line, but they had to respect the local heavenly path. Dongwang and Token's actions had crossed the line. Even if Dongwang realm came, he would not be able to protect them. District Lord, Qi Zhu, you can carry it out on behalf of me. Qin Hao ordered. As you wish, God of Kunlun. District Lord and Qi Zhu looked over at the same time. Their bodies glowed brightly. Buzz. At this critical moment, a beam of divine light pierced through the sky and descended from the outer realm. The aura it emitted caused the heavenly path of Kunlun to crack. It was as if the heavenly path was groaning in pain in front of this figure. Who is it? Qi Zhu exclaimed. As soon as he finished speaking, a ferocious divine light surrounded Dongbo and Token. Qi Zhu and the District Lord attacked at the same time. When the two top experts of Kunlun hit the divine light, it was as if they had sunk into a quagmire. Then, the divine light exploded into a wave of energy that slammed into Qi Zhu and the District Master's bodies. The two of them were instantly knocked back like fallen leaves in the autumn wind. They could not withstand a single blow. This is the aura of a divine master. In the Jinlong sword realm of Rikugenji, countless experts looked up at the divine light that pierced through the sky. It was too familiar. They had only felt this level of power from their own divine master. Swoosh! Swoosh! Two balls of light flew out from the sea of Kunlun and turned into two extraordinary figures. They were Lucio and Long Miao. They felt the aura of a divine master and were alarmed. They came over and saw the shocking scene in front of them. You can't kill my people in Kunlun. Soon, an extremely majestic face appeared in the divine light that pierced through the sky. The eyes that looked down on the world were so noble that no one dared to look directly at them. God of the East, Higashua looked up at the domineering face and was extremely excited. He was saved. He would not die. Li Chuji did not have the ability to kill him. God of the East, what do you want? When the Xin clan lord saw this, he stood up. Then, an external clone whizzed out and turned into a huge divine shadow. It stood in the sky and exuded a powerful aura of the Great Path. It faced the god of the East coldly. At the same time, Qin Hao also flew up and activated the 9 Palace Battle God art. He stood side by side with the Zine clan lord. They were like two gods standing tall and carrying the entire Kunlun. Dong Huang's will that descended first glanced at Qin Hao. Then, he turned to Zine and said, "Descendant of Zihua, you are still no match for me. Where is the god of the heavens?" Zine asked confidently. "I don't want to start a war with the Sky King Divine World. This time, my people overstepped their boundaries and caused trouble. I should be the one to punish them. I must take him away." Dong Huang's tone was extremely domineering. "However, Higashua has been expelled from the Dongwang realm by me. He is no longer a member of the Dongwang realm. Therefore, he can be left for you to deal with. Divine Lord, you can't." Higashua was terrified. He grabbed the Dong Bo Supreme God's robe and kept crying for help. The Dong Bo Supreme God closed his eyes and did not dare to say anything. "All right," Qin Hao said, "the god of the East can take your people away, but Higashua must stay. Higashua must die. The god of the East will stop for a while on Qin Hao's body." He nodded and said, "Li Chuji, you have created a perfect heaven wheel. With such talent, why do you need to stay in the Sky King Divine World to be the ruler of the heavenly Tao? You can definitely take the position of the ruler of the Sword Divine World." When Dong Wang said this, he deliberately glanced at Lu Qiu and Long Mian. When he saw that Lu Qiu and Long Mian's expressions changed, he retracted his gaze in satisfaction. "Divine Lord, you don't have to worry about where I am going," Qin Hao said indifferently. Dong Wang smiled and did not say anything else. The projected will swept up Dong Bo, Token, and a few other emperor-level subordinates of the Dongwang realm. It turned into a turbulent light and left Kunlun. Only then did the huge power that could suppress the heavenly Tao disappear. "He is simply treating my Kunlun as if there is no one left," Ancestor Qi said angrily. Ancestor Chu and the owner of the district both had ugly expressions on their faces. A divine master controlled dozens or even hundreds of planes, and the power they possessed was like a universe unto itself. The heavenly wheel was almost perfect. It was not something that could be suppressed by a small plane. Unless Tian Wu God was present. Otherwise, no one could stop Dong Wang from doing anything. "Chu San, you don't have to back down. Even if you force him to stay, Dong Wang will definitely not dare to kill." Zine said, "A divine lord would not easily start a realm war. After all, the consequences were too severe. But we really can't keep him." Qin Hao smiled helplessly. If he really had the strength to force them to stay, he would not have wasted words with Dong Wang. Zine was speechless. Indeed, he pointed at Higashua and said, "Then what about him?" Chapter 2021. The will of the god of the East descended upon Kunlun and took away supreme God Dongbai and Token, but he did not take Higashua with him. He treated him as an abandoned pawn and drew a clear line between them. Higashua's life and death had nothing to do with Dong Huang's realm. It was entirely up to Kunlun to decide. This was because Dong Huang also understood that his people had made a mistake and overstepped their boundaries. He had forcefully barged into the Sky King realm to take away Dong Bai and Token. So one of them had to be left behind to take the blame and answer to the Sky King God. Although this matter had started because of Higashua, it was impossible for Dong Huang to not know that Dong Bai and Token had left the Sky King realm without permission. The reason why Dong Huang did not stop it and chose to turn a blind eye was because he wanted to see the strength of the current Kunlun Sea. Now, he had seen the result and unexpectedly discovered that Qin Hao had taken over the position of heavenly Tao controller. Dong Huang's goal had been achieved, so he naturally would not continue to protect Higashua in order to avoid igniting the Sky King God's anger. It was best to abandon a pawn. "Brother Lu Qiu, save me. I don't want to die. I still don't want to die." Higashua was terrified to the extreme. He looked at Lu Qiu. Now that he knew that he had no one to rely on, the only person who could save him was Lu Qiu. "Higashua, All of this is the result of your own actions. If you still have some backbone in your own life. Lucio replied coldly. He had already warned Higashiwa not to provoke Li Chuji. Now that Kunlun's forces had consolidated, he could not save him even if he wanted to. Moreover, he did not want to save him from the bottom of his heart. End your own life. Higashiwa's face was ashen. He stood where he was, crying and laughing at the same time. He was filled with sorrow. Tang, Qin Hao murmured. Then he stopped paying attention to what was happening here and flew towards the core island of Kunlun. Zine clan lord, the owner, Master Lu, and the higher-ups of the Chu and Qi clans all followed him. The figures in the sky soon disappeared as if there had never been a fierce battle. Immediately after Qin Hao and the others left, Higashiwa's blood-curdling screams could be heard in the air. Her aura spread between heaven and earth. The storm finally came to an end. On this day, Kunlun experienced the greatest change in the past 10,000 years. The Lin people of the three Divine Path families were annihilated, and the Qi people submitted to the Kunlun Sea. The supremacy's orthodoxy and sacred ground, which had been silent for 10,000 years, returned to the mainland overnight and successfully took control of the heavenly Tao. Kunlun gave birth to a new ruler, the god of Kunlun, Li Chuji. Everything that happened today caused a great shock in the cultivation world of the Kunlun mainland. Whether it was the Lin people, Qin Hao taking over as the ruler of the heavenly Tao, or even the will of the god of the East, everything was shocking. Although the Lin people were annihilated because they fought against the Kunlun Sea, the real culprit was Qi Zu. He slaughtered the Lin people all by himself. Later, the Qi people even sent people to break into the ancestral land of the Lin people and exterminate the remaining Lin people. From then on, the Lin clan was completely removed from Kunlun. Qin Hao and the lord of the Zine clan naturally knew about this. The two of them had no objections and allowed the Qi clan to deal with the aftermath. Leaving the remnants of the Lin clan behind would only cause chaos, and no one knew what they would do in the future. The return of the Kunlun Sea was inevitable. Most people in the cultivation world knew that it would come sooner or later. However, Li Chuji taking over as the ruler of the heavenly Tao was unexpected. After that day, Li Chuji's name spread out of the Kunlun plain at an incredible speed and spread to the surrounding mainland. This made many rulers of the heavenly Tao in the Sky Yong divine world curious. What kind of legendary figure could take over the supremacy Zihua and take over the Kunlun that had been vacant for 10,000 years? In the end, many Divine Path Masters asked around and found that Li Chuji was a mystery. It was as if this person appeared out of nowhere and became famous after a battle. He took over the will of Kunlun. Regarding this, the Temple of Heaven Yong didn't give any instructions. It was as if they had silently acknowledged Li Chuji's existence. After a while, the Kunlun continent returned to peace. The Kunlun Sea set up the Kunlun Pavilion and built a statue of Supremacy Zihua. Just like the Dongwang Pavilion in the Phantom Continent, it contained the will of the Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao operated in an orderly manner in Qin Hao's hands. Originally, the Lord of the Zine clan wanted to build a statue of Qin Hao, but he was rejected. This was because the Temple of Heaven Yong Divine Lord hadn't sent anyone to crown him. Qin Hao felt that this wasn't good, so building a statue of Supremacy Zihua was the most suitable. Regarding this, the Lord of the Zine clan naturally didn't object. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, a few years had passed. During this time, Xiaohan and the others cultivated with the Divine Lord of the Taichu, Divine Lord and Fairy Su. Qin Hao learned divine arts from the Zine clan lord. Lucio and Long Mian often came to visit Qin Hao and spar with him. They gradually became closer. However, as the princes of the great Dao sword world, Lucio and Long Mian couldn't stay for long. After a few years, they prepared to return to the sword world. God of Kunlun, we'll meet again if fate wills it. Lucio smiled at Qin Hao. Long Mian smacked his lips and glared at Lucio. Calling Chu San the god of Kunlun is too polite. To be honest, other than those monsters in the Archean realm, almost no other realm can forge a perfect heavenly wheel. I really don't know how you did it. Maybe it's because of luck, Qin Hao said with a smile. Long Mian looked helpless. It seemed that he couldn't find out the other's secret. He stepped forward and patted Qin Hao's shoulder. Brother Chu San, the divine techniques of the Dragon Clan are in your hands. Please keep your promise. In addition, after Divine Lord Tian Yong gives his decree, don't forget to visit me in Lucio in the Great Dao Sword World. We also want to introduce you to some friends, all of whom are geniuses of the Sword Way. That's right, Chu San. Isn't the one beside you trying to forge a heavenly wheel? The power of sword will in our 3 Great Dao Sword Worlds is most suitable for him to forge a heavenly wheel. When the time comes, you can come to Rikujinji to find me. Perhaps I can provide some help. Lucio said, referring to Wuk. It's the same if you come to the true Dragon Sword World. Long Mian hurriedly said, Thank you, princes. When the time comes, I will definitely bring Wuk there. Qin Hao replied with a smile. Going to the Great Dao Sword World was part of his plan. However, it was hard to say whether he would go to the Lu Divine Hall or the True Dragon Palace. Okay, we'll be waiting for you at any time. Lucio clasped his hands and said, Farewell. Farewell, Long Mian said. Take care. Qin Hao returned the salute. Immediately, the Rikujinji team and the cultivators of the True Dragon Sword World turned into 2 beams of divine light that pierced through the clouds and traveled beyond the firmament. Were they a little too affectionate with you? Wuk looked up at the sky and revealed a thoughtful expression. Logically speaking, even if Qin Hao controlled a part of the heavenly path, in the eyes of Lucio and Long Mian, his status was only higher than that of ordinary heavenly will cultivators. It was not to the point where they could call each other brothers. After all, those 2 were the proud sons of heaven who were qualified to take over the position of Divine Lord. It seems a little unusual, but it is not a bad thing. At least when we go to the Great Dao Sword World, the 2 princes will take care of us. It will be very convenient for us, Illusion Zun said. When Wuk entered the Divine Gate, he had to go to the Great Dao Sword World. This trip would not change. Yes. Everyone nodded. Lucio and Long Mian intended to make friends. Naturally, it was a good thing. Let's go, Qin Hao said. After sending off Lucio and Long Mian, the group returned to the Kunlun Palace and then busied themselves with cultivation. Last time, Donghuang's descended on Kunlun and took away Dongbai in token. At that time, Donghuang saw that Illusion Zun was present, but he did not say a word. Basically, it was a tacit consent for Illusion Zun to leave Donghuang's realm. At that time, Illusion Zun felt a little lonely. He had maintained order for Donghuang in the Phantom Continent for nearly 10,000 years, but in the end, he was not as important as the disciples of the other party. But now it seemed that it was not a bad thing. Completely breaking away from Donghuang's realm would lead to better development for Illusion Zun. Time flew by unknowingly. In the Kunlun Sea, Qin Hao was not only learning spells from Zien Clan Lord, but he was also practicing alchemy. Kunlun Continent had a foothold in alchemy. Alchemy was an old tradition. Needless to say, the Kunlun Sea and the aristocratic families, every cultivator here dabbled in alchemy. Qin Hao certainly could not slack off because he was the god of Kunlun, and he supported the face of Kunlun. At this time, on a quiet and peaceful island, Chu Wen and Chu Ning of the Chu clan, as well as 2 of Chu Ning's brothers, were waiting in a fairy pavilion. A disciple of the Kunlun Sea brought tea, and everyone was quietly enjoying it. How long more does the god of Kunlun need to cultivate? Chu Wen asked. Now, there were rumors in the Kunlun continent that the Chu clan was very close to the god of Kunlun. In reality, this was not the case. In the battle back then, because Chu ancestor had stopped the battle and did not immediately express his determination, he missed a great opportunity. If there was any relationship between the Chu clan and Qin Hao, it was because of Chu Ning. In fact, Chu Wen felt that it was a pity. If the ancestor had been more decisive back then, the Chu clan would definitely have had more room to grow. Moreover, with the help of Qin Hao's power of the heavenly path, it would have been extremely beneficial to the ancestors' cultivation. Unfortunately, The ancestor had missed it. Chuan even felt that the ancestor had missed far more than this. How important was a person who had forged a perfect heavenly wheel? Just look at the number 1 overlord of the primeval world, the primeval world. It was a necessary condition to become a divine king. Qin Hao's future was limitless. Even if he could not become a divine king who ruled the world, once he reached a certain level of cultivation, he would definitely not be inferior to the heavenly horn god. At that time, even if the Chu clan became the ruler of the heavenly path, it would definitely not be empty talk. However, it was very likely that the Chu clan would have no fate with all of this. Although it was a pity, fortunately, Li Chuji still recognized Chuning. This was enough. I'm not too sure. I'll be learning from the sect master on the 3rd day of junior year. Next, I might have to condense heavenly willpower. As for how long I'll be in seclusion, I don't know. Illusion Reverend took a sip of tea. In these few years, he could clearly feel the changes in Qin Hao's body. To put it bluntly, even without the support of the heavenly path, 2 Illusion Reverends would definitely not be Qin Hao's opponent. Qin Hao's growth was obvious. Father, let's visit Master again in the future, Chu Ning said, not wanting to disturb Qin Hao's cultivation. Chuan nodded. That's good. Chuan will bring my 2 sons to visit the god of Kunlun another day. Chuan wanted to leave Chu Yu and the eldest by Qin Hao's side, but he did not know whether Qin Hao would be willing or not. If the 3rd day of junior year comes out, I'll inform him. Illusion Reverend stood up and said, Take care, Chu Patriarch. Thank you, Illusion Reverend. Please stay. Chuan left with Chu Yu and Chu Ning, somewhat disappointed. In fact, he was quite envious of Illusion Reverend, who could serve Qin Hao. His son Chu Yu's talent was far above his daughter Chu Ning's. If he could be nurtured by Qin Hao and stay by his side, he would definitely achieve great things. Chu Wen's group was preparing to leave the island. Suddenly, they seemed to have sensed something. They could not help but stop and turn their heads to look in a certain direction. Over there, a dazzling glow radiated above the Kunlun Sea. The void rumbled incessantly, and an extremely tyrannical heavenly might descended. Vaguely, it was as if there were endless flames flying into the void, wanting to create the way of the heavens. Unfortunately, with a shattering sound, the glow dissipated, and the phenomenon disappeared. Chu Wen's eyes were filled with shock. At that moment, he felt that the heavenly path's power was being twisted by some kind of power. Looks like the 3rd day of junior year failed. Illusion Reverend sighed silently. It was easier said than done to nourish the heavens with Tao will. Even Zihua Supreme could not do it. However, Qin Hao's divine power foundation was still shallow. With the support of the Origin Realm's power, perhaps he could do it in the future. Chapter 2022. In the heavenly ocean lake of Kunlun, Qin Hao sat cross-legged on the surface of the lake. Circles of ripples spread out under him, slowly moving into the distance. Beside him, there was an extremely huge lotus. Its petals were open, and the white lotus shone on top of him. Endless divine light showered down, bathing his body. The heavenly lake flower queen transformed into a fairy. She flapped her emerald green wings and flew beside Qin Hao. She held a tiny green scepter in her hand and kept waving it at Qin Hao, causing the divine water of the heavenly lake to flow into his body. Qin Hao's face was slightly pale, and his breathing was a little chaotic. Just now, he had failed to mend the sky and used up a huge amount of red lotus divine power. He was greedily absorbing the divine will of the heavenly lake. At this moment, it was as if he had become a part of the heavenly pool. He sat there quietly, as if he was one with the pool. As the Flower Emperor continued to heal him, Qin Hao's body gradually rumbled with the will of the great path again. Waves of divine light cyclones rushed out and flew towards the sky above the Kunlun Sea. It was as if he wanted to merge with the great path. Rumble. Muffled sounds rang out in the void. Endless divine light swirled and once again converged into a spectacular vision. The airflow seemed to be opening up space from the heavenly path, making it contain the universe of the great path and giving birth to the power of space. Divine light swept out from Qin Hao's body. The cyclones became denser and denser. They were like blinding lightning flashing in the sky, tearing everything apart. Those cracks did not last long and quickly closed up on their own, blocking Qin Hao's divine will outside. Enough! A figure descended. Zine Clanlord looked at the pale Qin Hao. He did not know whether to scold or praise him. He said, "Your spatial divine power is not complete yet, and you can't reach the heavenly wheel. You want to merge with the heavenly path? Don't you have any self-awareness?" "I just want to try and see." Qin Hao looked up and smiled bitterly. "That's enough. You've done enough. Cultivation isn't something that can be accomplished overnight. More haste, less speed. This is the case for martial arts and the divine Tao. Your foundation is shallow, so there's no need to rush." Zine reached his hand into his sleeve and took out a divine pellet. He opened his palm, and the divine pellet flew towards Qin Hao. Qin Hao swallowed the divine pellet, and immediately his limbs and bones were filled with a powerful energy. His Tian Luan glowed brightly, and his complexion gradually improved. At this time, one figure after another flew over from the distance and landed on the heavenly lake. They were all the higher-ups of the Kunlun Sea. Xiaohan, Wuk, and the others were all here. Huanzun also brought the people of the Chu clan here. "Greetings, sect leader." Everyone said, "Yes." Zine nodded slightly and said to Qin Hao, "Do you feel better now?" Qin Hao smiled awkwardly. "This brat is too daring. As long as he has the slightest chance, he will directly make a move. He doesn't even look at his own cultivation. He is delusional to think that he can reverse the heavenly Tao." Master Lu said angrily. Just now, the god of Kunlun was mending the sky. Chu Wen's heart trembled. No wonder for a moment the heavenly Tao seemed to have been reversed. He is too lacking. My father was the same back then. Both of them were not fully prepared. Zine glanced at Qin Hao. However, he has improved a lot in these years. He is about to condense the second divine power. The space aura overflowing from Qin Hao is extremely strong. After all, he lived like a god every day. The resources of the Kunlun Sea were all given to him. He ate divine pellets, drank immortal jade, and smelled divine incense in his dreams. How could he not improve? It's all thanks to senior brother. Qin Hao laughed and looked at Xiaohan and Wuk. He was not the only one. Xiaohan had been cultivating with Fairy Su. In these years, he had stepped from the peak of enlightenment to the flawless emperor path. The aura he emitted was obviously very close to nirvana. He had probably made sufficient preparations and only needed a slight opportunity to enter nirvana. This step was very difficult. It was the most difficult hurdle of the emperor path. As long as one crossed it, half of one's body would have entered the divine gate. If it was in the divine wilderness in the past, Xiaohan would not have been able to reach this level in just a few years. Wuk was already at the 7th level of nirvana. The power of faith was getting stronger and stronger. He was the closest to proving divinity. Tang had also improved a lot. He was at the 3rd level of nirvana. And all of this was inseparable from the abundant resources of the Kunlun Sea and the guidance of Tai Chu and the others. Tao, while mending the sky. The Supreme Venerable did this back then. Amazing. Clan leader Chu Wen was greatly shocked. He bowed to Zine Clanlord. Although Kunlun's heavenly Tao gave birth to all things, it did not have any attributes. Everything depended on one's cultivation. When one lost the advantage of the heavenly Tao, the speed of cultivation and understanding of Tao would naturally fall behind other planes. For example, the heavenly Tao did not contain Tao forces such as Sword Tao, Fire Tao, and Ice Tao. They had to rely on one's own comprehension and hard work to condense the essence soul. This was the reason why the 3 divine path families rose. Their ancestors had comprehended the great Tao of fire first. After 10,000 years, they had honed the Tao of fire to the extreme and passed it down from generation to generation. This created the glory of the 3 families. Other forces were not as good as them. It was because of this that the supreme, venerable Zihua wanted to mend the sky and change Kunlun's attributes so that the common people would have better living conditions. As long as one attribute could be born in Kunlun, then everyone would be able to comprehend the great Tao and be equal. Lindu, ancestor Chu, and Chi Zhu did not have this kind of breadth of mind. Changing the heavenly Tao is not a secret. You will know sooner or later. Now, Chu San is shouldering the heavy responsibility. The future of Kunlun depends on his results. Xin clan lord landed slowly and sat beside Qin Hao. The Flower Emperor danced around the two of them. It landed on Qin Hao's shoulder and sat on Xin's arm. It was quite cute. Seeing this, everyone sat down. A group of Kunlun's big shots sat on the surface of the heavenly lake as if they were discussing Tao in a dojo. Chu San, how much do you know about the divine path? Xin asked. Qin Hao had learned a lot of divine powers and spells over the years, but he seemed to be confused about the immortal state. He often asked Xin for help. I don't know much about it. I only know that the cultivation of the immortal state is related to the strength of faith. Also, it is related to the heavenly wheel and divine power. The heavenly wheel is divided into 4 grades: mortal, saint, immortal, and perfect. It is also known as small heavenly wheel, great heavenly wheel, immortal lord heavenly wheel, and immortal king heavenly wheel. Qin Hao told him everything he knew. He did not know much about the immortal state because the highest cultivation in his previous life was only the heavenly wheel, which was the beginning of the immortal state. Also, the heavenly wheel was not perfect. It was a great heavenly wheel, and it was forged in the superior environment of the immemorial realm. Maybe its foundation was too weak. Zhan Wu's situation was much better than Qin Hao's. He forged a celestial grade heavenly wheel, but it was not perfect. Therefore, when they were stranded in the divine wilderness, they had the idea of recultivating. The heavenly wheel is divided into 4 grades. This is the foundation and the condition to judge the innate foundation of the enemy. However, the true strength of the immortal state is not completely determined by the heavenly wheel. Xin explained. Qin Hao nodded. It was true. In the battle at the Kunlun Sea, the grade of his heavenly wheel crushed the forest seedling. Even though he had mastered the heavenly way, he could not defeat his opponent. He found that the forest seedling's divine power was much stronger than his. Senior Xin, since the strength of the immortal state is related to the heavenly wheel and divine power, why can't the high-grade heavenly wheel suppress the low-grade heavenly wheel sometimes? Wuk asked seriously. You can see the heavenly wheel as a container. The higher the grade, the greater the capacity. Divine power is the quality. Often, the more divine power is injected into the heavenly wheel, the stronger the power it can unleash. Xin said and looked at Master Lu and Taichu. Then, Master Lu and Divine Lord Taichu released their heavenly wheels. They were both great heavenly wheels of the sacred grade, and their radiance was similar. However, Qin Hao and Wuk felt that Master Lu's divine will was stronger. In comparison, Divine Lord Taichu was much weaker. It was completely imaginable that if they really fought, Divine Lord Taichu would not be Master Lu's opponent. How can this be? Wuk frowned. The same basic conditions, but Master Lu's divine will was stronger than Divine Lord Taichu. This is about cultivation. Everyone in the mortal world knows that in addition to the level of cultivation, the longer the cultivation time, the more precious the cultivation method and the stronger the strength. It's the same for the immortal state, but under normal circumstances, it's difficult to distinguish the cultivation time of a heavenly wheel expert. Xin Clan Lord's face became serious. Everyone knew this in their hearts. After stepping into the immortal state, one would have endless lifespan and would not enter the cycle of reincarnation. Therefore, even if one old and one young stood together, it was possible that the young would live longer than the old. Then how do we distinguish? Qin Hao asked. Chakra. Xin Clan Lord pointed to their heavenly wheels. Look carefully. This is the key to analyze the strength of your opponent in the future. If you encounter a heavenly wheel divine pattern with more than 7 meridians in 10,000 years, don't think about anything and run immediately. Divine pattern. Qin Hao looked carefully. His red lotus fiery eyes flashed. Through the 2 bright heavenly wheels, he quickly found that there were lines on the edge of Master Lu's heavenly wheels. Divine Lord Taichu's heavenly wheels also had lines on the edge. Master Lu had 2, and Divine Lord Taichu only had 1. One heavenly wheel divine pattern represents 10,000 years of divine source, 2 for 20,000 years. Do you understand this explanation? Xin Clan Lord's eyes fell on Qin Hao. Qin Hao's body involuntarily trembled. He swallowed and nodded heavily. It turned out that there was such a secret hidden in the heavenly wheels. One divine pattern represented 10,000 years of divine source. Then, Senior Brother said that those with more than 7 divine patterns were all undying old monsters. In that instant, Qin Hao and Wuk felt their scalps go numb. According to Xin, even if a mortal grade Tianluan had lived for 70,000 to 80,000 years, it could still kill an immortal grade Tianluan by relying on its monstrous cultivation. To be exact, one divine pattern doesn't really have 10,000 years of cultivation. Look at yourself. Master Lu pointed at Qin Hao. As long as you enter the divine level, one divine pattern will appear. A 1,000-year-old divine pattern is the same as a 9,000-year-old divine pattern. But after 10,000 years, a second divine pattern will appear. By the same logic, an 11,000-year-old divine pattern and a 19,000-year-old divine pattern both have 2 divine patterns. I just happen to be 10,000 years old, so 2 divine patterns have appeared. I've cultivated for 6,000 years. Divine Lord Taichu smiled and dispersed the heavenly wheel divine light. Hiss! Qin Hao and Wuk couldn't help but sigh. Fortunately, they knew the secret of the heavenly wheel today. Otherwise, they might be careless and die in the hands of a small heavenly wheel someday. In this case, the divine pattern is the key to determining the strength of the divine level. Xiao Han said, "It's not that simple. The number of divine patterns represents the length of cultivation, which is also the level of cultivation. But the key to strength lies in the heavenly wheel and divine power. Innate conditions account for a huge proportion." Xin Clan Lord looked at Qin Hao. There are 2 kinds of divine power. One is the external divine power, and the other is the internal divine power. They come from different directions. You should know this. Qin Hao nodded. Although Senior Brother didn't understand, he could guess that the external divine power was the belief given by all living beings. The internal divine power came from oneself and was the determination of oneself. When the internal divine power and the external divine power are combined, it will be born into the power that fills the heavenly wheel. Your rapid progress now largely comes from the external divine power of Kunlun. Xin said the key point. Qin Hao took over the will of the heavenly path of Kunlun. Naturally, he became the belief of all living beings. Even the people present more or less provided a source of power for Qin Hao. Okay, let's stop talking about the divine level. In fact, there are many conditions that can determine one's combat power. For example, the True Dragon Roar and One Sword 7 kills that you have obtained are the supreme divine techniques refined by the divine will of the great path of the Dragon Clan and the Sword Emperor. They are broad and profound and can also allow you to exert extremely strong power. Then you integrate them into your heavenly wheel and activate them with divine power. Xin stood up and said to everyone, "Continue to cultivate. You still have a long way to go. It's not that easy to reverse the will of the heavenly path of Kunlun. You need enough stability." With that, Xin stepped forward and prepared to leave Heavenly Lake. "Senior Brother, how did the exalted Venerable One die?" At this time, Qin Hao stood up and asked. Wuk, Xiao Han, and the people of the Chu clan also trembled slightly. They stared at Xin's back. They all wanted to know the truth of the death of the exalted Venerable One. Your current strength is far from enough. When you have condensed 10 strands of divine power from the heavenly wheel and possess 8 divine inscriptions, I will naturally tell you. Or, Zine abruptly turned around and stared at Qin Hao. Or you can become a divine king that controls the myriad worlds. Divine king. Everyone stared at Qin Hao. This target was really not an ordinary big one. Chapter 2023. The death of the exalted venerables was a mystery. Although Zine didn't tell them the truth, Qin Hao could vaguely guess. How powerful was the exalted venerables who had condensed 10 divine wheels and possessed 8 divine marks? He should be close to a divine king. Qin Hao could only know the truth after meeting such conditions. Or he could directly become a divine king who ruled all the worlds. From the harsh conditions and the heavy sigh that Master Lu let out when he left, it wasn't hard to tell that the death of the exalted venerables was close to the divine king level. Perhaps it was caused by a divine king, which was why Zine didn't tell them. Divine kings were the strongest cultivators who stood at the top of the Eldritch universe. They were truly invincible. If the exalted venerables died at the hands of a divine king, Zine wouldn't be able to avenge them even if he told them. At least not now. Qin Hao was the future of Kunlun. His cultivation was still shallow, and he still had a long way to go. Zine didn't want to burden him and affect his cultivation. Above the divine ocean, endless sword chi flew and intertwined into 2 huge sword nets, whistling endlessly. At this moment, 2 figures stood in the sword nets, facing each other from a distance. Qin Hao's body flashed with the light of catastrophe. Countless divine swords hovered around him, all formed by sword will. He looked at Wuk opposite him. A huge golden sword lotus bloomed under Wuk's feet. It was as dazzling as a sacred throne. Sword will flew out from the sword lotus and circled around Wuk's body, making the true extreme sword emperor look like an unparalleled sword god. Go, Qin Hao said. The sword will circling around him flew forward quickly. The sword net above his head turned into a river of swords. It surged violently, trying to disperse the huge sword lotus. Wuk closed his eyes. His long hair danced gently. He sensed the invincible sword aura coming from the opposite side. The sword will on his body was agitated and made sounds of swords. Strands of golden sword chi flew and intertwined, forming a thick sword screen. Tens of thousands of swords crossed and blocked in front of him. Buzz! It was as if a ferocious gust of wind was blowing at him. His flawless long hair whipped wildly behind his head as he faced the impact of the sword river of the Great Path. Cracks continued to appear on the sword screen in front of him. The cracks spread, and the huge sword lotus also began to move backward, unable to withstand the mighty pressure. Seeing this, Qin Hao smiled faintly and pressed forward with his finger. The surging sword river became even more ferocious. Layers of sword light were like waves. As a ray of dazzling light flew out from his fingertip, a tyrannical sword was suddenly born. It was hidden in the sword river and flew out together with it. The sword screen cracked and shattered. The sword river formed by tens of thousands of sword wills hit Wuk's body. At this time, the sword lotus under his feet bloomed with Emperor's light, trying to stabilize him. But with Qin Hao's finger attack, Wuk's closed eyes suddenly opened. He dispersed his defense and accepted the tens of thousands of sword wills. Above the divine sea, there was a faint groan of pain. Wuk was hit by the sword river. His face was slightly distorted, and his aura became extremely chaotic. But he still held on, allowing the sword river to wash his body and continue to pour into the sword lotus. The sword wills of the 2 sides mingled for several hours. During this process, the light emitted by the sword lotus became more and more dazzling. Finally, following a divine rumbling sound, a beam of light descended from the sky and bathed Wuk's body. The surging sword river had already disappeared. His aura gradually stabilized. After enduring the adversity, he was actually even stronger than before. It seems that my efforts were not in vain. Qin Hao smiled and said. Traces of the light of catastrophe were withdrawn into his body. 8th level of the loss. Wuk revealed a satisfied smile. The absolute shadow sword seal between his eyebrows flickered with divine splendor, and the divine will it emitted became even stronger. Having Qin Hao as a good friend was better than having the world as an enemy. Don't look at me with gratitude. Everything is because your sword heart is strong enough. Qin Hao said, "Do I need to be grateful to you?" Wuk said. Qin Hao was speechless. He was so pleased with himself. He stepped forward and patted Wuk's shoulder. "In just a few decades, you are about to become a sword god. You are even faster than Alwu. I should have left you in the divine wilderness to prevent you from surpassing me. It's not too late to regret it. You can leave me in Kunlun." Wuk glanced at Qin Hao. "To the sword world?" Qin Hao thought for a moment and nodded. "Yes, it's time to go." The situation in Kunlun was stable, and the Kunlun Sea had regained control of the heavenly path. If he wanted to continue to improve and return to the Archean realm as soon as possible, he could not stop. Wuk's laws were at the 8th level, and the next step was to forge the heavenly wheel. The sword world of the Great Path was the most suitable. Moreover, great ancestor Wu Jun was very likely to be a martial god. This trip to the sword world was inevitable. "Let's go and say goodbye to senior brother," Qin Hao said. He had cultivated in the Kunlun Sea for decades and was indebted to Ziyin for taking care of him many times. He had to tell him that he was leaving. The two of them flashed and came to the Kunlun Hall. Ziyin saw them here and seemed to have expected it. He said calmly, "Are you leaving?" "Yes. Wuk's laws are about to reach perfection. I want to take him to the sword world. In addition, I want to try to find the martial god." Qin Hao told him the truth. "Okay." Ziyin nodded. The 3 great sword worlds are indeed the most suitable places for Wuk to forge the heavenly wheel. This is no small matter. Once the heavenly wheel is forged, it is destined for life. If you're not certain, it is best not to be so anxious. Or, after you find the martial god, you can listen to his opinion. Senior brother is straightforward. Qin Hao did not expect Ziyin to agree so easily. "If I'm not straightforward, am I going to tie you up in Kunlun?" Ziyin glared at Qin Hao. "However, I can't let you go to the sword world alone. You have to send some people to accompany you. Otherwise, I won't be at ease." Now, Qin Hao's fate was tied to Kunlun. Not only was he the supreme god of the divine wilderness original realm, but he was also the controller of the heavenly path in Kunlun. If one was injured, the other would be injured. He did not want to see Qin Hao get into an accident. "There's no need to be so grand. I'm not going out to cause trouble. Moreover, Lu Qiu and Long Miao are the princes of the sword world. If something happens, I can still find them." Qin Hao felt that there was no need. "No, let Xiao He, Tai Chu, and the ancestors of the Qi and Chu families follow just in case." Ziyin looked serious and did not allow Qin Hao to make the slightest mistake. This ostentatious display is like a divine son going out on a trip. Qin Hao was a little flattered. "In my eyes, you are more precious than the successor of the divine king. Forget it. I will be more at ease if I go with you personally." Ziyin slowly got up, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. "Sectmaster, are you going with us?" Wuk looked at Qin Hao. "Why are you looking at me?" Qin Hao was used to being alone and had never shown off in the divine wilderness. Ziyin abandoned Kunlun Sea and actually wanted to accompany him to the sword world. This makes it look like a divine son going out on a trip. Moreover, I have encountered a bottleneck in my cultivation. Ziyin chuckled and said, "It's decided then." Qin Hao and Wuk were helpless. It seemed that Ziyin was determined and could not be changed. On the Elixir Mountain, we can't bear to leave the god of Kunlun. It is the old man's lifelong wish to serve the god of Kunlun. Otherwise, I would rather die than live. Take me with you. We are willing to follow the god of Kunlun to the sword world. A group of old alchemists held on to Qin Hao's hand and begged with tears in their eyes. Beside them, Master Lu was sulking and mumbling inaudibly as if he was cursing something. Li Chuji wanted to go to the sword world. Now, the entire Kunlun Sea was alarmed and wanted to go with him. Even the sect master abandoned his business and left it to Master Lu. "What's there to go? You're just a bunch of bootlickers." Looking at Qin Hao, who was surrounded by everyone, Master Lu revealed a pleading look. Unfortunately, it was ignored. "This trip to the sword world is for cultivation. It's not good to mobilize so many people. Everyone, please refine pills in Elixir Mountain with peace of mind. Also, the pills that I refined a while ago have been left in the cauldron. Everyone can receive them under Master Lu's concoction. Qin Hao tried his best to appease the group of old men, and then he left the place. Soon, after he left, the rumbling of Dao techniques came from Elixir Mountain and became more and more intense. There was even a spectacular scene of a cauldron being sent flying into the sky. Those old alchemists who usually got along well with each other and called each other brothers fought. In order to compete for the pills left by Qin Hao, they greeted each other with vulgar words. It seemed that even Master Lu was besieged. A few days later, in the sky above Kunlun Pavilion, "Master, I want to go with you. Take me with you." Chu Ning pleaded. "Ninger, don't mess around." Patriarch Chu once said. The people accompanying this trip were all in the heavenly wheel realm. Chu Ning's cultivation was too low and should stay in the family to cultivate. "Good disciple, I practiced the 7 killing sword for you many times. The sword style is also imprinted on your soul. After I leave, you have to cultivate hard." Qin Hao patted the head of the Chu family's third miss. "Don't worry, sister. Second brother will protect the god of Kunlun for you," Chu Yu said with a smile. After Chu Wen's request, Qin Hao agreed to let Chu Yu go with them. In addition, Chu Zhu, Qi Zhu, and a heavenly wheel realm expert of the Qi family would also go with them. "It's getting late. You must take good care of the god of Kunlun along the way," the owner of a divine workshop said solemnly. "Don't worry, owner," Zine said. "Let's go." "Fairy Su, I'll have to trouble you to pay more attention to this matter." Qin Hao glanced at Su Qian, who nodded. Then, a divine light soared into the sky like a heavenly pillar that reached the 9 heavens. It pierced through the firmament, and many figures disappeared. After the light dissipated, Qin Hao and the others left the Kunlun continent. "Girl, what did Li Chuji tell you?" Master Lu asked. "The god of Kunlun said that in about 100 years, several distinguished guests will come to the phantom continent of the Dongwang realm. At that time, I will welcome them back to the Kunlun Sea in advance," Su Qian replied. She had already learned the appearance of Zhang Wu and the others from Qin Hao. When the time came, she would take care of them. In the endless universe, the starry sky was bright. A green cauldron shuttled through the untainted land at an extremely fast speed, heading from the Heaven Ho realm to the 3 sword realms. On this trip, in addition to Qin Hao and the others, Suzerain High of Kunlun, Zine, Qin Xiaoa, and Divine Lord Taichu were among them. The ancestors of the Qi family and the Chu family each brought a descendant of their family with them. There were a total of 12 people in the team, except for Xiao Han and Tang. All of them were in the heavenly wheel realm. What could also reach the level of a god? Such a lineup and strength was stronger than that of the average god clan. Basically, it was not inferior to the divine sons of the major god clans. "Senior brother, how is the relationship between the supreme holiness and the Heaven Ho god?" Everyone was sitting cross-legged on the cauldron. Qin Hao and Zine clan lords sat together and couldn't help but ask. After the battle at the Kunlun Sea, the Lin people were removed from the Kunlun Sea. The Kunlun Sea regained control of the Way of the Heavens and eliminated many scum, such as Divine Lord Gitu, who was also killed by Divine Lord Taichu. However, although Qin Hao controlled the Way of the Heavens, he didn't have a name. The Heaven Ho Temple didn't send anyone to crown him. Of course, the Heaven Ho God didn't deny it, because he also didn't send anyone to question him. It was as if the Heaven Ho realm had already thrown the Kunlun matter outside and allowed it to develop on its own. "I'm not too sure." Zine shook his head. His father's cultivation was amazing back then. He had forged the celestial grade heavenly wheel and was the true number 1 expert below the Divine Lord. However, Zine didn't know about his relationship with the Divine Lord. Chapter 2024. I've heard rumors that the year the Supreme Venerable passed away, the Divine Lord's sorrowful cries could be heard in the Heavenly Wall Temple. I wonder if that's true? Buck looked at Zine. "I've never seen it, so I naturally can't believe the rumors," Tai Tai said sadly. The Heavenly Wall Temple was located thousands of miles above the Heavenly Wall main world. That area was equivalent to a forbidden area. Without the Divine Lord's summons, ordinary people would not dare to enter. Qin Hao and Wuk looked at each other. The Heavenly Wall Temple could be seen as the imperial palace of the mortal world. It was incomparably sacred. Without the great emperor's summons, ordinary people would not be able to enter. That shouldn't be the case. Qin Hao thought about it. Regardless of whether the rumors were true or false, now that he controlled the heavenly path and was one of the Divine Lord's spokespersons, the temple should at least summon him once. However, the Heavenly Wall deity did not. Don't think too much. The Divine Lord's intentions are not something we can guess. The Heavenly Wall Temple did not deny your existence, which is equivalent to tacit approval. Just cultivate in peace. You will meet the Divine Lord sooner or later. Zine said. He had also never met the Heavenly Wall deity. Qin Hao nodded and did not ask any more questions. He wondered what kind of person the Heavenly Wall deity was. He really could not see through him. Unknowingly, everyone sat on the divine cauldron and traveled through many heavenly roads. They were in the wilderness and looked around. Everywhere was filled with galaxies and worlds. It was as if there was no end to them. Along the way, Qin Hao and the others saw many realms. There was no lack of broken ruins that floated in the untainted land. Tai Chu explained that these broken ruins were extremely ancient. In the past, they were also dazzling worlds. Because of a tragic world war, they were destroyed in the collapse of the divine path, and all life in the worlds were wiped out. The Realm War was the cruelest war in the untainted land. Once the war broke out, a few planes would be destroyed, and the whole realm would be destroyed. Many realms would be involved, and the defeated party would become a fragment of the way of heaven in the untainted land, drifting away. Everyone chatted idly, talking about many legends of the supreme, ancient era. As for how long the desolate era had existed, no one knew. But up until now, the most dazzling thing was undoubtedly the primeval realm. It was the only great world that had survived from the supreme, ancient era. It had existed for countless years, and as long as the desolate era existed, the primeval realm would be as long as it existed. It could be imagined just how terrifying the god-kings of the primeval realm were. At the beginning of the Chaos Era, that group of god-kings had already appeared. Central State City. The Central Continent wasn't a plane. It wasn't under the control of any immortal king. It was an extremely small continent, controlled by a small Pang family. It was like a small island floating in the vast ocean, rooted in the primitive era. Although the Central Continent was inconspicuous, and the Pang family did not have any Supreme Tao elite warriors, it was the only place one had to pass through to reach the three great sword realms. It was also the only place one could rest. Right now, a grand event was being held in Central Continent City. Pang family's martial exchange ceremony was held once every 100 years. The branch family's disciples and the city's elites could all participate, and there were generous rewards. The training ground was set up under a huge ancient tower in the city. It was crowded. All the young talents of Central Continent had gathered together. It was very lively. Above the huge tower, there was a row of noble seats. These seats were for the elders of the Pang clan. As time passed, the martial arts conference was about to begin. Soon, a group of people came to the top of the tower. They were the higher-ups of the Pang clan. The Pang clan leader was a middle-aged man. His cultivation was at the 8th level of nirvana. He was half a step into the divine gate. Unfortunately, he could not reach the divine path. Even so, he was a true powerhouse of Central State City. At this moment, Patriarch Pang was wearing a purple dragon robe with a golden dragon on it. His dignified face had a smile on it. He brought the upper echelons of the family to the training ground. He looked down at the training ground and let out a long sigh. Clan leader, young Master Mubai, is here. Someone said. The Pang clan leader straightened his clothes, collected his thoughts, and put on a solemn posture. He cupped his hands in a direction and said, "My Pang clan's martial arts symposium is held once every 100 years. Today, we are fortunate enough to have young Master Mu by come to watch. is truly an honor. Clan leader Pang, you're too kind. A voice drifted over. On the other side of the ancient tower, a group of silhouettes appeared. Although these people deliberately concealed their cultivation, the chi they exuded was much stronger than the strongest person in the central continent, the Pang clan leader. Greetings, young Master Mubai. The higher-ups of the Pang clan bowed to the young man in the lead. Young Master, please take a seat. The Pang clan leader extended his hand and offered the seat in the center of the tower. It should have been his seat. However, Pang clan leader willingly gave him up because the origin of this young master of the Mu clan was extremely extraordinary. He was one of the 3 great sword worlds, the most powerful young master of the Mu clan in the divine world. He was a direct descendant of one of the 3 great sword worlds. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Young Master Mubai nodded and smiled. He was handsome and extraordinary. However, he did not take a seat immediately. Instead, he bowed slightly to an old man with white hair and a beard and said, "Senior you, please take a seat." The old man's face was dignified. He nodded and stepped forward and sat on the Pang clan leader's seat. The Pang clan leader and the higher-ups of the Pang clan were surprised. They knew that young Master Mubai's status was very high. It was not humiliating for the Pang clan to give up the seat. However, the young master gave the seat to the old man. Where did this old man come from? The Pang clan leader could see that even the noble young Master Mubai was very respectful to the old man. However, the old man did not care. It was as if it was natural. Everyone, please take a seat. The Pang clan leader adjusted his mentality quickly and did not ask any more questions. Mubai's affairs were not something people of his level should ask, let alone this mysterious old man. Suddenly, he smiled and said to the cultivators of Rikujanji, "The Pang clan leader is too polite." The cultivators of the Mu clan in Rikujanji responded and took their seats. Then, the higher-ups of the Pang clan sat in the side seats. "Let's begin," the Pang clan leader said loudly to the training hall. The Centennial Tournament officially begins. In the training hall, an elder of the clan who was in charge of supervising the tournament shouted. Then, a figure stepped out from both sides of the training hall. They stepped on the stone steps and stepped onto the platform. They cupped their hands slightly, and the battle began instantly. "Young Master Mubai, look. That is my grandson, Pang Bao. He is cultivated for more than 400 years and has become an imperial lord. He has reached the extreme realm." The Pang clan leader pointed to a lively figure in the arena and said. Mubai looked over and saw that Pang Bao was extremely strong and had brute force. Dilly was vigorous, and he attacked and defended well during the battle. He was very experienced. He nodded and said, "It is rare to see someone who is cultivated for more than 400 years and has such combat experience." Although Mubai's words were pertinent, they were also polite. If Pang Bao was in the Rikujanji Mu clan, such cultivation time and realm would not be considered outstanding. However, he was now a guest in Zhongzhou City, so he naturally had to give some face to the Pang clan leader. "Young Master Xia, you flatter me. My grandson is the most talented in the clan. He will most likely win this year's tournament." The Pang clan leader was full of confidence. "What do you think, Elder Yu?" Mubai smiled and asked the old man in the main seat. The old man's face was indifferent. He coldly glanced at Pang Bao and said, "He is just average." In the eyes of the old man, Pang Bao was really difficult to be compared with the descendants of their clan. Giving him an average evaluation was already polite. "Senior, don't you think you were a little harsh?" Someone beside the Pang clan leader said unhappily. He had stepped into the Emperor's path in more than 400 years, and he had mastered the Emperor's path. In the eyes of the white-bearded old man, he was just average. This old man's standards were not ordinary. He was a little arrogant. How can a sparrow know the greatness of a rock? The white-bearded old man said coldly. "You," the Pang clan leader said angrily. "Shut up." The Pang clan leader scolded him secretly. How dare he talk back in front of young Master Mubai? Different people have different views. Pang Bao, in the great world, there are many monsters. Perhaps you're not that conspicuous, but in Zhongzhou City, you are a first-class genius. You should be recognized. Mubai smiled and mediated. The higher-ups of the Pang clan felt a little better. The white-bearded elder didn't mind. Mubai's words were reasonable, but he didn't mean to look down on the Pang clan. He had seen too many monsters. Geniuses like Mubai weren't first-rate in the elder's opinion, let alone the best. The battle progressed very quickly. Pang Bao was indeed worthy of being a core descendant of the Pang clan. He was born with a unique advantage. Although the opponent he faced was also remarkable, in the end, he was still defeated by Bao Bao. After that, a few more battles were fought. The higher-ups of the Pang clan watched with relish, but the old man could not stand it anymore. If it were not for Mubai, he would have left. Ha ha! My grandson is indeed invincible. He has won 3 battles in a row. Even the #1 Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou City, who is known as the Emperor's Path Rookie, has been defeated by him. The Pang clan leader slapped his leg and laughed. Pang Bao had lived up to his expectations. Buzz. At that moment, a muffled sound came from the sky. Then, a boundless pressure descended on the training ground. It was like the pressure of the heavens, causing the battle to stop. Everyone looked up at the sky. What's going on? The Pang clan leader stood up. His eyes shone with Emperor's light as he stared at the sky. Above Zhongzhou City, a dazzling light shone down. In the light, a world-suppressing divine cauldron descended. Many figures sat on it, emitting an aura that shocked the Pang clan leader. Divine level. The higher-ups of the Pang clan looked troubled. Heavenly wheel level. Mubai also stood up slowly. However, his expression did not change. Since he could come to Zhongzhou City, it was not strange that there would be divine-level experts from other great worlds coming to rest. He just did not know which great world's experts were here. Soon, the world-suppressing divine cauldron descended on the training ground. The majestic aura silenced tens of thousands of people. Everyone's hearts trembled as they looked at the figures descending from the world-suppressing divine cauldron. It was Qin Hao, Zine, and the others. I am Pang Daoyuan, the city lord of Zhongzhou City. May I know where you came from? I apologize for not welcoming you. When the Pang clan leader saw this, he immediately went downstairs to welcome them. Tian Ho Divine World, Kunlun Mainland, Kunlun Sea. I apologize for disturbing you on the way. Zine clan lord waved his paper fan and said valiantly. Qin Hao was speechless. His senior brother was also someone who was extremely good at pretending. It seems that we have broken into their training ground and disrupted some ceremony. What glanced at the surroundings? There were so many people, and all the gazes were focused on them. They were so eye-catching the moment they arrived. Chapter 2025. So you are seniors from the heavenly Ho Divine World. Seniors, you must have had a long journey. The Pang clan leader led the way to the top of the tower. Qin Hao put away the venerable cauldron and walked up with Zine and the others. The Pang clan's martial arts competition was paused for a while. Rikujinji Mubai. On the tower, Mubai saw Zine and the other heavenly wheel experts arrive. He cupped his hands, and the accompanying Mu clan experts also stood up. Tai Chu, Qi clan, and Chu clan's old ancestors couldn't help but feel slightly moved. They looked at Mu by a few more times. The Mu clan's status in the divine world of Lu Shun was not ordinary. It was far higher than the 3 great clans of Kunlun. They didn't expect to meet a member of the Mu clan here. So it's the young master of the Mu clan, Mubai. Tian Ho Realm, Kunlun Sea, Li Chui. Zine clan lord cupped his hands and greeted Mubai. Although he had lived in the sect for a long time, he had heard about the forces of the Eldritch world. The Mu clan's strength was second only to God Lord Lu, and their ancestor worked for God Lord Lu. Qin Hao heard Zine's name and almost spat out the immortal wine he drank on the way here. Li Chui? What good name. Ha ha. I don't know which God Lord is protecting the Central Continent, but we're lucky enough to welcome the experts of Rikujinji and Tian Ho Divine World. It's an honor. Everyone, please take a seat. Come, serve the tea. The Pang clan leader was in a good mood. With a single order, many young women leisurely walked over and served tea to the 2 great experts of the God Realm. Pang clan leader, Is there a ceremony in your place? Zine Clan Lord asked. Yes, today is the century-old martial arts competition of the Central Continent. We set up the venue here not long ago. Since Senior Chuyi and the other seniors are here, let's watch for a while. After a while, I'll set up a banquet to welcome the seniors. The Pang Clan leader said proudly. Thank you. Zine Clan Lord nodded. It was no wonder that he had felt the most intense energy fluctuations here when he had descended. Well, it was fine. Since he had encountered it, he might as well take a look. He did not want to spoil the other party's mood. The sparring continued in the training hall. Divine Lordly, the Kunlun Sea has not been involved in worldly affairs for many years. Why have you all left the heavenly oyster realm this time? Where are you going? Mubai asked Zine. Oh, I have a junior who is about to step into the divine gate and forge the heavenly wheel. Because he cultivates swordsmanship, he is preparing to head to the Great Path Sword Realm. Zine said casually. Mubai smiled. So that was the case. He had thought that the Kunlun Sea wanted to reappear in the untainted land and wanted to show its splendor. The sword world of the Great Tao was indeed the most ideal place to go. Mubai did not participate in the Kunlun Grand event this time. Naturally, he was not aware of the changes that had happened there. Moreover, he did not know that Li Chuyi in front of him was actually the current leader of the Kunlun Sea. I have long heard that the divine path of the exalted Lord Zi Hua is boundless. Even after 10,000 years, no one has inherited his legacy. Is this true? At this moment, someone from the Mu clan asked loudly. Zine frowned slightly and glanced at that person. His father's death was a taboo in the Kunlun Sea. The Mu clan did not avoid the taboo. It was fine that he spoke directly, but it seemed that he also had doubts about his father's strength. This was extremely impolite. Just ask your Prince Lucio and you will know. Divine Lord Taichu's face was cold. Whether the divine path of the exalted Lord was boundless or not, Lucio knew it clearly. I was away from Rikujinji for a while because of some business. Lucio went to the Kunlun Sea alone when I was not around. That's not good enough. Mubai chuckled. The Mu clan and the Lu clan had a very good relationship. After all, the Mu clan had accompanied God Lu to establish the great Rikujinji in the early days. In Mubai's mind, he had long thought that the Mu clan and the Lu clan were not separated. Therefore, Lucio was a prince and was like a brother to him. Naturally, he was less respectful and more cordial. As for the exalted Lord Zi Hua of the Kunlun Sea, it was undeniable that he was a hero of a generation. After all, he was a quasi-divine master. However, the Kunlun Sea had declined, and its status was no longer comparable to the Mu clan. He did not feel that his clansmen's words were wrong. Not only Prince Lucio, but Prince Long Miao of the True Dragon Sword Realm also went to the tomb of the Exalted Lord. As for the result, you can go back and ask the two princes. When Taichu saw Mu Bai's attitude, anger rose in his heart. Fellow cultivator, please don't blame us. We don't mean to be disrespectful to the Exalted Lord. The heavenly way is different. So is the divine power of reproduction. No matter how much Lucio and Long Miao have achieved, they will be restricted by the heavenly way. They will be at a disadvantage more or less. This has nothing to do with talent. Mubai argued. He felt that even if Lucio failed, it was not because of him, but because of the heavenly way. If the people of the Kunlun Sea went to the Sword Realm, they would also be restricted by the heavenly way. Young Master Mubai, do you think that the great way's power of the heavenly way has nothing to do with a warrior's talent? Qin Hao looked up at Mubai. Isn't it? Mubai said with a smile. Then have you heard that a perfect heavenly wheel with the power of the original realm can integrate with the heavenly way of any side of the untainted land and become the ruler of the continent? Qin Hao said. As soon as he said this, Mubai's expression changed. Indeed, this was not just empty talk. There were top geniuses in the Archean world who had personally tried it. All perfect heavenly wheels could integrate with all things and create the universe. However, those were the descendants of the immortal kings. They were too far away from them. Mubai could not compare to them in his life. However, when Qin Hao said this, It was like a slap to Mubai's face. For a moment, it was difficult for Mubai to step down. Humph! Since the Kunlun Sea talks about the power of talent as omnipotent, I believe that all of you must be amazing talents. I am Mu Yao, and I am in the Heavenly Wheel realm. I would like to ask for advice from all of you in the Kunlun Sea. I hope that you will not be stingy with your so-called talent. Suddenly, a divine general stood out beside Mubai. He was extremely valiant and had a straight face. His eyes fell on Qin Hao. This person deliberately embarrassed the young master of the Mu clan, and Mu Yao was extremely unhappy. The Pang clan leader's expression suddenly changed. The atmosphere was a bit strange. At this time, below the ancient tower, the elites of the central continent city were fighting nonstop. Above the ancient tower, the two great experts of the immortal world were also fighting fiercely. Haha, we have all come from afar and are guests of the central continent. This is a fragment of a plane. Are you not afraid of destroying the foundation of the Pang clan when you fight with heavenly wheels? Zine said. Advice? The Mu clan? Once upon a time, the Kunlun Sea was equivalent to God Lu, who was above the Mu clan. Moreover, even if it had declined, it was not something that could be trampled on by anyone. Yes. Seniors, the central continent is weak. It cannot withstand the battle of heavenly wheels. The Pang clan leader's body trembled slightly. Not to mention a fragment of a plane, even if it was a complete way of the heavens, it would be shattered and destroyed in an instant if heavenly wheels were allowed to fight, unless it was supported by the power of the Divine Master. Don't worry, Pang clan leader. If heavenly wheels can't win, then send the younger generation of the Way of the Emperor to fight. Isn't there an Emperor's Way martial arts competition happening below? Or should I say that the people of the Kunlun Sea are not confident in their talents? Mu Yao's words were sharp. He purposely emphasized the word talents and continued to pressure them. Are you serious? Zine's eyes darkened slightly. Then he smiled at Mubai. Mubai said, It's rare for the Rikujinji to meet with the people of the Heaven's Way martial arts competition. Let's liven things up and let the disciples of the Pang clan get some martial arts inspiration. Okay, we'll do as you say, young Master Mubai. Zine clan leader looked at Qin Hao. Qin Hao nodded. There were 12 of them on this trip. Most of them were in the Heavenly Wheel realm. Only Xiao Han and Wuk were still on the Way of the Emperor. If they were to fight, they would definitely send Xiao Han, Crazy Tang, and Wuk. They were brought by Qin Hao, so they had to ask Qin Hao's opinion first. Qin Hao didn't care, but since young Master Mu wanted to see what talents were, then they would fight. Clan leader Pang, let me borrow the dojo. After getting Qin Hao's permission, Zine said to the Pang clan leader. The Pang clan leader sighed, but he didn't dare to disagree. He couldn't afford to offend the two giants. With a wave of his hand, the martial arts competition was suspended. The people who were fighting left one after another, leaving the dojo. Honor! Qin Hao transmitted his voice. Xiao Han nodded silently. He tapped his toes and floated down from the ancient tower. Standing on the arena, he said, Unblemished Way of the Emperor. Please advise me. Unblemished Way of the Emperor. Mu Zhao, you go. Mu Zhao looked deeply disappointed. He wanted to show his skills and vent his anger for his young master. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Wheel realm of the Kunlun Sea didn't dare to do so. Yes, uncle. A figure flew down from the ancient tower and landed steadily in front of Xiao Han. I'm Mu Zhao from the Mu clan. Unblemished Way of the Emperor. Please advise me. Make your move. Xiao Han responded. Mu Zhao didn't hold back. He pointed his sword at the sky, and a fierce whirlwind blew around him. Divine swords condensed from the will of the Emperor flashed out and spun around his body. Then, he pointed his finger forward, and the sword wind enveloping his body surged out. It shook the dojo and swallowed Xiao Han with a momentum that could wipe out everything. So strong. Everyone's eyes were focused on the two figures on the dojo. It was supposed to be a martial arts competition in Zhongzhou City, but now it was a battle between two divine realms. Mu Zhao's momentum was amazing, and the disciples of the Pang clan were shocked. This was a warrior born in a great world. What do you think of my nephew, Patriarch Pang? Mu Zhao asked Pang Patriarch with a cold smile on his face. My grandson, Pang Bao, can't compare to Senior's descendant, Patriarch Pang said weakly. It had nothing to do with cultivation level. The moment Mu Zhao's will of the emperor bloomed, Pang Bao couldn't compare to his control of the will of the Wei. Even if Pang Bao reached Mu Zhao's cultivation level in the future, it would be difficult for him to display such strength. Haha, my nephew has only been an emperor for 400 years, Mu Zhao said. Then, he ignored Patriarch Pang. How could Pang Bao be called a genius? Among the descendants of the Mu clan, he was ranked in the middle, or even lower. Why isn't that girl doing anything? At this time, an elder of the Pang clan looked down and asked worriedly. Mu Zhao had activated his will of the emperor to an extremely powerful level. Anyone with a little bit of eyesight could see that he wanted to sweep Xiao Han off the stage with one move and slap the Kunlun Si's face. On the other hand, the disciples of the Kunlun Si had yet to make a move in the face of the aggressive Mu Zhao, unless they had absolute confidence in winning. Otherwise, how much did they underestimate their opponent? You don't know the power of my Mu clan's will of the sword. It's good to learn a lesson. Mu Zhao snorted coldly. The people of the Kunlun Si were bound to lose. At this time, Xiao Han made her move. Just as she was about to be hit by the sword wind of the Great Path, she suddenly disappeared. At this moment, even Patriarch Pang couldn't sense where Xiao Han had gone. He couldn't lock onto her aura. What a sharp movement. Many of the onlookers exclaimed in shock. Mu Zhao also sensed a slight change. It seemed that his opponent was extremely unusual. His will of the emperor radiated out and enveloped the entire training hall, turning it into an emperor will sword domain. Soon he caught sight of Xiao Han. His expression changed, and he hurriedly turned around. Get down. Xiao Han appeared behind Mu Zhao like a ghost. She pointed her finger forward and shot out a ray of dazzling swordwill. Although it wasn't very powerful, it contained an extremely terrifying and dangerous aura. Beads of sweat appeared on Mu Zhao's forehead. With a roar, a turbulent swordwill swirled around him again. Moreover, the sword wind that had lost its target earlier turned around with a rumbling sound, wanting to sweep towards Xiao Han again. But at this time, Xiao Han's beautiful eyes glowed with a strange emperor light. Before Mu Zhao could completely adjust his sword stance, he suddenly met Xiao Han's eyes. In an instant, he felt the world spin, and the day turned into darkness. An extremely noble figure of the Empress pressed into his spiritual soul. The tyrannical will of the Emperor suppressed Mu Zhao so much that he couldn't move. In a daze, the joints of his legs creaked and his body swayed. It seemed that he couldn't even stand properly. Mu Zhao! Mu Zhao shouted, trying to wake up his nephew who was trapped in the spirit suppression. Spirit technique, spell. At the same time, Master Yu, who had been sitting in the center of the ancient building with his eyes closed, opened his old eyes slightly. He looked at Xiao Han with a strange expression. Why did this spirit energy feel so familiar and intimate to him? In the untainted universe, there were many warriors who cultivated the spirit Tao, and many experts who had cultivated it to the peak. But this was the first time he felt a familiar spirit fluctuation from someone he didn't know. Boom! In the training hall, Muyu let out a loud cry. Although he had woken up his nephew in time, Muyu was still under Xiao Han's mental suppression. The sword intent around him collapsed in an instant. In the next moment, a sword shadow swept across the space and hit Muyu's body. The sword intent was tangible but intangible. It did not contain any lethality, but it sent Muyu flying. He rolled all the way from the stage to the ground. His body was covered in dirt, and his hair was in a mess. You let me win. Zine clan lord laughed loudly. The sword will of the Mu clan is indeed powerful, especially the rolling body movement. His clothes are torn, but his facial features are not hurt. Wonderful. Qin Hao echoed. On the other side, Mu Zhao was so angry that his face was flushed and his whole body trembled in his chair. Chapter 2026. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation and All-Out Sword Kunlun Hai won the first round. Xiaohan's performance was as quiet as a virgin and as agile as a rabbit. Mu Yao was also careless. Because he didn't know what his opponent was good at, his spirit was suppressed, and he was defeated instantly. This was the advantage of the original realm. The will of the way was unpredictable. It was difficult for the enemy to make accurate judgments. Mu Yao was born in the Great Path Sword realm, and he was only good at swordsmanship. This couldn't be changed. In fact, from the moment he stepped onto the stage, Xiaohan already had the advantage of information. Almost forgot. Kunlun's way doesn't contain attributes. Cultivation depends on the individual. My nephew didn't know his opponent's ability, so he was careless and lost, Mu Yao said, unconvinced. A loss is a loss. Doesn't one's cultivation depend on talent? Qin Hao said. Mu Yao glanced at Qin Hao. This silver-haired youth seemed to be very arrogant. He said, "Shall we continue? I'll keep you company." Qin Hao gave Tang a look. Tang took a big step forward and stepped onto the platform from the ancient tower. He shouted in a low, muffled voice, "Third Order Nirvana, fourth to fifth Order Nirvana from the divine world of Earth. Who wants to fight? Arrogant, I'll do it." Among the people from the divine world, an immortal emperor with a heavy sword on his back soared into the air and landed on the ground. He stared ahead, but didn't attack immediately. It was as though he was waiting for Kuang Tang to attack first. Mu Yao's failure sounded an alarm in Rikugenji. When they couldn't figure out the opponent's ability, it was safer to attack later. "Come on." Tang opened his eyes wide and waved at the Sword Emperor of Rikugenji. "You first," the Sword Emperor said. Many members of the Pang clan showed a surprised expression. Were they afraid of him? Crazed Tang cracked a smile and strode forward. Along the way, his heavy footsteps caused the entire platform to rumble. "He's a barbarian." The Rikugenji Sword the Arch could tell a glance. Judging from Tang's aura and the wild aura that he was emitting, this person should have reached the martial emperor realm physically and was good at close combat. At the thought of this, the Sword Emperor of the Lu God realm silently revealed a faint smile. He spread his legs and stood firmly on the platform like two pillars. A majestic emperor intent swept out from his body. The heavy sword on his back suddenly flew up. He raised his arms and grabbed the sword hilt. With a roar, he slashed out an incomparably turbulent sword intent. Close combat? How could he give Tang a chance to get close to him? What a heavy sword intent. The Pang clan leader was slightly shocked. The people of the Great Path Sword realm all cultivated the way of the sword, and there were many types of way of the sword. The Rikugenji Sword Emperor on the stage had an extremely vigorous sword will. His attacks were not flashy or flashy. In fact, his moves were very vulgar and not aesthetically pleasing. However, such an attack was the simplest and most effective method. Suddenly, two words appeared in the minds of the members of the Pang clan. Pure swordsmanship. That's right. Although Mu Hai's precept power has just increased by one level, his understanding of the pure swordsmanship has deepened. Mu Zhao smiled and nodded. Mu Hai was a fourth-level Nirvana disciple from the side branch who was very accomplished in the way of the sword. His cultivation was one level higher than his opponent's, and he knew his opponent's background. Obviously, he would not give the Kunlun Si a chance to get close to him. This battle was in the bag. Mu Bai smiled to himself. He had the same idea as Mu Zhao. The sword on the platform slashed down. The light seemed to tear the sky apart. Even though they were watching from afar, Mu Hai's surging sword will shock the warriors of Zhongzhou City. Tang stopped in his tracks. He raised his head and looked at the Sword Emperor in a daze. He did not want to use his life spirit to directly beat down the Sword Emperor of the Divine Realm. Who would have thought that his intentions would be seen through? However, it was not a big problem. Just then, wisps of flames of the way emerged from Tang's body. In the blink of an eye, they became extremely violent flames. They gathered into a spectacular firestorm. The cries of the divine bird phoenix could be heard from the storm. It was sacred and loud. The Rikugenji Sword Emperor had just swung his sword when he saw the firestorm that suddenly formed in front of him. His expression changed. His opponent was not a pure barbarian cultivator. Muhai, be careful. That person has the divine bloodline of the divine bird phoenix. Mu Zhao also sensed the change in Tang's aura. Screech. 100-meter-long divine bird appeared. Every feather was burning with terrible flames. It soared into the air. This was the incarnation of the divine bird phoenix. It flapped its fiery wings and spat out a breath at the Rikujinji, Sword Emperor. Terrible tongues of fire pierced through the void and directly wrapped around Muhai. Waves of fire surged in front of Muhai's eyes. He roared, and his body emitted endless imperial light. He also set off a turbulent swordwell storm. Countless swordwell currents flew out, trying to crush the flames and suppress Tang's attack. However, the burning power of the phoenix flames was extremely terrifying. The swordwell surrounding the Rikujinji, Sword Emperor, became weaker and weaker. The swirling currents kept disappearing and were burned into nothingness. Finally, a cry of agony resounded from the Dao platform. His defense was broken, and a body covered in flames grabbed everyone's heart. The heavy sword fell from his hand, and the Sword Emperor of the Divine World howled like a headless fly as he ran around blindly. Tang, you've gone too far. Qin Hao's heartstrings tightened. His figure disappeared from his original position and reappeared in the midst of the battle. His palm directly pressed onto that burning body. Under the astonished expressions of countless people, wisps of flames flowed into his palm like flowing water. Very quickly, the phoenix flames were completely absorbed, and the crisis of the Sword Emperor of the Divine World was resolved. Tang was born in the original realm and was a descendant of the primordial spirit phoenix god. The power of his flames was very strong. Not long ago, even Qin Hao did not dare to underestimate him. Later on, in the celestial mountain of the Kunlun Sea, Tang had undergone nirvana and obtained the divine intent of a phoenix demon god. No matter whether it was his strength or his Tao of fire, both had undergone a huge qualitative change. How could this Sword Emperor of the divine realm of the continent of the gods be able to withstand it? Not to mention laws of nature that were one level higher. Even if they were 2 levels higher, it would still be very difficult to withstand. Tang's nonsense just now was not deliberately arrogant, because he had the qualifications to challenge a 5th-level nirvana. Moreover, the divine fire of the celestial mountain contained the super-powerful divine technique of the phoenix, great demon god. Qin Hao cultivated this technique. Naturally, Tang, who inherited the divine fire, also knew it. If Qin Hao did not make a move, this Rikujinji Sword Emperor would most likely die. He would explode and die. Bang! The sword light slashed down and hit the phoenix divine bird's head. Although it created a burst of sparks, it could not even cut through Tang's divine fire defense. The sword will immediately dissipated. Presumptuous, Qin Hao said with a sullen face. Why don't you just let me beat you up? He actually wants to play with me. Tang withdrew his emperor will. The huge divine bird phantom turned into a flame and drilled into his body. There was a bit of anger on his face. Go back, Qin Hao scolded. Tang glared at him with dissatisfaction. He remembered the Phoenix clan ancestors' instructions before he left, and Muri, who was sleeping in Xiao Han's consciousness. He could not help but lower his head and return to the ancient building. Thank you. Thank you for your help. On the stage, the Rikujinji Sword Emperor's face was burned and destroyed. It was a terrible sight. His face was covered in blood and dirt, and there was great fear. You were a bit heavy-handed, but this kind of injury should not be a problem for a celestial wheel realm cultivator from Rikujinji. If it is not treated well, the Kunlun Sea can take responsibility, Qin Hao said. After he finished speaking, he looked up at the ancient building. No need, Mubai said loudly. He grabbed at the void, and a dazzling divine light fell and bathed the Rikujinji Sword Emperor's body. The injuries that were burned by Tang began to heal at a visible rate. Soon he was as good as new. However, while the flesh could heal, the trauma to the soul was not so easy. Seeing this, Qin Hao did not say anything and returned to the ancient building. At this moment, the atmosphere in the ancient building became much more oppressive. Originally, it was just a spar between two great worlds, but with Tang's actions, it became a little cold, and there was a trace of invisible, killing intent. Continue. Mubai's expression was not good. He glanced at Zine Clanlord. If young Master Mubai wants to continue, then let's continue, Zine replied. Good. The Kunlun Sea is indeed full of talents. The previous two exchanges were between lower emperors, and they crushed our Rikujinji. I wonder how the Kunlun Sea will perform in the aspect of divine Tao. Mujan, go and experience it for yourself. Mubai's face was gloomy as he personally called out name. Yes, young master. A figure stepped out from behind Mubai. He was dressed in black, and his aura was especially cold. He was like a merciless sharp sword, giving people a sense of oppression that kept people away. Mu-Clan, Mujan, 8th level Nirvana realm. Mujan stood on the platform and reported his cultivation. This person's talent in Sword Dao is far from the previous two. Don't be careless. Zine transmitted his voice to Qin Hao. Qin Hao nodded secretly. He also felt that if his judgment was not wrong, Mujan's sword should be a sword of slaughter, pure slaughter. In this aspect, it was extremely similar to the flawless Sword Dao. What, are you confident? Qin Hao communicated with his mind. 8th level Nirvana realm, close to perfection in the laws, half of his body squeezed into the divine gate, an existence close to God. Those who could reach this step had already proven themselves. Any 8th level Nirvana realm cultivator should not be underestimated. Moreover, he was Mubai's personal sword servant. If he was not extremely talented, he would not have been brought by Mubai. He must be a promising talent. What did not reply? He directly walked to the platform and stood in front of the black-clothed Mujan. He said, Kunlun Si, Showuk, 8th level Nirvana realm. I am a pure sword cultivator. I only know the sword and nothing else. Mujan's eyes moved slightly. A pure sword cultivator. Was this a reminder? This is the person that Hierarch Li is going to bring to the sword world. Mubai looked at Zine, 8th level Nirvana realm, about to cast the heaven's wheel. He was at the same level as Zine. Yes, this junior of mine is very obsessed with the sword. Zine replied with a smile. It seems that Hierarch Li values this junior a lot. Mubai looked down and spoke loudly, as if he deliberately wanted everyone to hear. But the main purpose was to remind Mujan, you're not very lucky. Sure enough, Mujan's breath became colder. His mouth opened and closed, faintly saying a few words to Wuk. Wuk's sword-like eyebrows slightly raised. He understood from a movement of his mouth. Mujan wanted him to do his best. Otherwise, Wuk might be very injured in this battle. The intention was obvious. The Mu family wanted to take revenge for the previous battle. Mubai ordered Mujan to do so. I hope you can also do your best, because my sword is very strong. Wuk's body slowly floated up. In an instant, his body radiated tens of thousands of Emperor rays, turning into golden sword intent. It was as if a boundless sea of swords was born in the void. Chapter 2027. Translator, Nyoibo Studio Editor. Nyoibo Studio people from the slaughter world. The sea of swords flashed, and the golden light covered half of the sky. The young warriors of the Pang family were shocked. Mujan, on the other hand, was calm. As the sword-bearing attendant of a young master of the Mu family, Mujan's talent was undeniable. He was one of the best in Rikujinji and had seen many powerful warriors. The sea of swords couldn't scare him. Then, the black-clothed man moved. Mujan's body gradually rose into the air, emitting wisps of black air. The air became thicker and thicker, spreading to the surroundings and dividing the sky. Wherever the black air passed, the temperature became extremely cold. When Wu Kei felt the aura released by Mujan, his body actually felt a little stiff. Immediately after, he swept his palm forward and layers of ripples appeared in the sea of swords. One golden divine sword after another flew out and pierced towards the black airflow. Chi-chi, the sound of metal freezing could be heard. The golden swords seemed to be frozen and fell into the black smoke. They couldn't move forward. The light slowly faded, and the sword will dissolve into nothingness. Freezing intent. Wu Kei thought to himself. He waved his hand again, and several rows of golden sword lights shot out. There were even more of them than before, and they kept changing positions. Vaguely, they seemed to form a sword formation, and an extremely intense sonic boom erupted. Mu Zhan could feel that flawless second wave of attacks was much stronger than the first. The sword intent was even more intense. He still didn't use his sword. Instead, he stared ahead. His slender fingers pinched together, forming an ingenious sword Dao seal. The black smoke began to flow strangely. Like a rope that swept forward, it wrapped around the golden divine sword. The golden swords were immediately restrained, and they couldn't move forward. They were stuck in the middle, and there was a violent vibration. At this time, a light flashed in Wu's eyes. The Emperor's will swept out, and the golden swords seemed to have been injected with powerful energy. The black ropes were broken, and hundreds of swords rushed towards Mu Zhan. Interesting. Seeing this, Mu Bai smiled. Mu Zhan was not originally a member of the Mu clan. He was an injured person he saved by chance. Perhaps his memory was damaged due to the injury, so he could not remember who he was. Thus, he followed him and was given the surname Mu. As they gradually got to know each other better, Mu Bai realized that Mu Zhan's fighting ability was extremely high. There's almost no one in Rikujinji who was on par with him. Lucio commented that in time, Mu Zhan's achievements would definitely not be below Mu Bai's. What did this mean? Mu Zhan was even more talented than Mu Bai. Now, the Nirvana Realm Sword Cultivator sent by the Kunlun Sea was able to break through Mu Zhan's terrifying freezing intent, which made him feel slightly surprised. This person should be an extremely talented junior of the Kunlun Sea. He might even be the successor of the Sect Master. Mu Bai nodded. Just look at their lineup. With so many heavenly wheels protecting a Nirvana Sword Emperor to forge a heavenly wheel in the Sword Realm, his status must be extraordinary. It's a pity that he met Mu Zhan. I'm afraid that this disciple of the Kunlun Seas will stop here, Mu Zhao said proudly. Mu Zhan would show the other party what a real sword was. Not bad. In midair, Mu Zhan praised. It was rare to be able to break through his freezing intent. You are indeed qualified to make me use my sword. After Mu Zhan finished speaking, the aura he emitted became even colder. The sound of ice forming faintly resounded in the training hall. Black ice crystals fell from the sky. He pointed his finger forward. Black chi condensed at the tip of his finger and exploded with a ray of light. Suddenly, it blasted out and turned into a huge black iron sword. It was incomparably heavy. The golden sword light disintegrated when it came in contact with the huge iron sword. What a strong, freezing intent. Wuk revealed a look of surprise. Not only was the freezing intent strong, but the sword intent was also extremely pure. The sword released when the two were combined into one gave him a throbbing feeling that he had not felt for a long time. This feeling had not appeared since the battle with Tian Do. It was not an exaggeration to say that even before the battle with Tian Do, he had not met such a rare opponent in the divine wilderness. It was worth it to come to the central continent city. Wang. The boundless sea of swords stirred up waves. Beams of swords flew down continuously, intertwining with each other and condensing into one. The light grew brighter and brighter. A dazzling golden sword was born, whistling forward like a bolt of golden lightning, clashing with the black iron sword. Rumble. There was a strong sonic boom below the ancient building. In an instant, the training hall cracked into a net. The turbulent sword intent swept out and covered the people of the central continent city. This is too strong. The training hall, supported by the elders, will not be able to withstand their sword intent. If this continues, not to mention the training hall, even the central continent city will be damaged. Countless people trembled in fear, causing panic. Wuk and Mu Zhan were both at the 8th level of the Nirvana realm. Their cultivation was on par with the Pang clan leader. Looking at the power of their will, the Peng clan leader was probably not their match. Set up the barrier. Supreme God Taichu strode forward. He clenched his fist, and the divine power in his body surged. He slapped down and poured it into the ground. Suddenly, the ground of the training hall seemed to be covered in a layer of sacred light. The cracked platform was repaired, and the foundation was stabilized. Among the Mu clan's team, a heavenly wheel expert also walked out. He waved his sleeves and lifted the powerful divine light. It turned into an eggshell-shaped light curtain and fell down, covering Wu Kei and Mu Zhan at the same time. The two heavenly wheel experts set up the barrier for this battle. Immediately, the people of the Central Continent city were relieved. Wuck is going to use some real moves. Qin Hao's eyes were filled with surprise. He looked at the man in black. He didn't expect Rikujinji to have such a talent who followed Mu Bai. As one of the three main realms of the Sword Realm of the Great Path, there were princes of noble birth like Lu Qiu. Among the aristocratic families and individual cultivators, there were also extraordinary figures like Mu Zhan. It was indeed the Lu Divine Realm. In fact, Qin Hao knew that there were many extraordinary people in Rikujinji. But people like Mu Zhan should be following Lu Qiu. That way, his skills wouldn't be wasted. Why would he follow Mu Bai? Mu Bai didn't deserve it. Be careful. After the two sides attacked, Mu Zhan's breath was calm. Obviously, he didn't use too much strength in the sword attack. Next, he would treat Wuck as an opponent and treat him seriously. The hairband fell off, and his long black hair spread out automatically. Mu Zhan's eyes slowly changed. His eyes were filled with spots of red light and became more and more ferocious. He looked a little crazy and scary. Mu Zhan placed his palms together and slowly pulled them apart. A divine sword with demonic patterns was born. Just like his aura, it was pure black, like the sword of a demonic god. At this moment, the aura that Mu Zhan released also added a heavy sense of oppression. This person is strange. Xine's expression changed, as if he was trapped in a memory. He stared at the field and revealed a thoughtful expression. Senior brother, what do you mean? Qin Hao didn't feel it, but there was a change in Mu Zhan's breath. It seemed to be colder. Moreover, there was an extremely strong killing intent in him. It wasn't killing intent towards Wuck, but an innate killing intent. This just confirmed Qin Hao's previous guess. You don't know much about the untainted land. There are indeed people who practice the sword of slaughter in the land of sword principle. Many people in the three great sword realms practice the sword of slaughter. But Mu Zhan's killing intent is extremely pure, different from others. His killing intent comes from the sky and doesn't seem to have taken shape. It reminds me of a place, Xine said in a serious tone. What place? Qin Hao asked curiously. The world of slaughter, Xine said in a deep voice. Chapter 2028. With the black sword in his hand, Mu Zhan's aura became even colder. At this moment, the spectators outside the training hall felt a chill in their bones. He stared at Wuck, then looked at his empty hand and said, "Are you still not going to use your sword?" Wuck raised his head and looked up. A beam of light suddenly descended from the sea of swords and landed in his palm. I have a sword. This was his sword. The Vientiane gold had entered Wuck's emperor will and turned into his life spirit. The sword will he released was a sword itself. Other than that, the sword lotus of the Great Path and the Juying sword print between his brows were also his life spirits. Wuck now had 3 life spirits, but unlike Qin Hao who had so many, all 3 life spirits were related to swords. Mu Zhan frowned slightly. Although he didn't think Wuck was underestimating him, it was too childish to take a strand of sword will so casually. Buzz! That black-robed figure moved. Mu Zhan's silhouette burst out with astonishing speed, like a black shadow that was as fast as lightning. He stabbed his sword forward, and a terrifying black light erupted from the devil's sword. Even space itself seemed to be frozen. Wuck's body also glowed with an incomparably turbulent emperor's light. He was enveloped by a dazzling golden light. He straightened his body, and the sword will in his palm completely solidified. With a clang, it collided with the black demonic sword. In an instant, countless golden bubbles spread out and the sword in Wuck's hand shattered. One extreme sword spirit. Qin Hao praised. Mujan was indeed a genius. He could shatter Wuck's Vientiane gold life spirit with one strike. Mujan's ability was rarely seen in the world. At this moment, Wuck's figure retreated quickly. A thin layer of black ice crystals covered his right arm. Half of his body seemed to be frozen. He was secretly shocked. Then, another beam of light fell from the sky and turned into a dazzling golden divine sword. Just as Wuck raised his hand to catch it, a black light slashed at his eyes. Then, he felt a tremor in his hand. The second sword was shattered by Mujan. "Sword come!" Wuck lightly shouted. The dense light and shadows were like meteors that frequently flew down. Ding, ding, dang, dang. They constantly inserted themselves between him and Mujan, blocking the other party's tyrannical attacks in exchange for a breath of time. He realized that the black sword in Mujan's hand was extremely hard and extremely sharp. It contained a ferocious killing power that normal sword intents could not withstand. Even the myriad form gold that was born from the divine wilderness heavenly Tao shattered upon contact with Mujan's sword. It could cut through metal like mud. He was too careless. Wuck suddenly recalled something that John Woo had once said. Even though the heavenly Tao of the outside world was not as all-encompassing as the divine wilderness continent, its Tao intent was complete. Those heavenly Taos that contained a certain attribute could give birth to extreme existences. It was very obvious that Mujan's talent was that extreme. It didn't have the ice attribute, nor was it freezing intent. The reason why the space's temperature was so low, to the point where it could freeze one's bones and blood, was completely due to the killing intent that Mujan released. Even the demonic sword in his hand was incomparably sharp due to the extremely intense killing intent. In terms of sword Tao, I don't think I'm inferior to him. In terms of sword soul, I'm not as good as him. Wuck analyzed quickly. According to the current situation, even if he released the myriad form gold to its limit, it would still be very difficult to break the other party's demonic sword. Mujan's strength was stronger than he had imagined. If you don't use your sword, this battle will end. Mujan's voice was especially cold. Along the way, all the golden divine swords that blocked his path were shattered. His eyes flashed with a red light, and the black mist that lingered around his body drilled into the demonic sword in his hand. In an instant, the sword intent emitted by the demonic sword became extremely cold. Borrowing sword from the heavens, Wuck pointed his sword upwards, and the Emperor's intent soared into the sky, merging with the power of the heavens. The sea of swords glowed with a dazzling light as they gathered together, condensing into a magnificent 10,000 zhang long divine sword. It flew down from the heavens, whistling as it fell towards Mujan's head. Mujan raised his head to look, and a trace of seriousness appeared on his face. His finger brushed the blade of the sword and slashed towards the giant sword from the heavens. The pitch-black light slashed open the horizon, and a deafening sound rang out. Even from far below, the training field seemed to have triggered an earthquake. The people of Central State City swayed left and right and were almost pressed to the ground by the descending power. Truly amazing. Qin Hao was pleasantly surprised. Following Mu Bai was a waste of talent, so Mujan might as well follow him. "Brat, are you dreaming?" Zine scolded with a smile. He could easily see through Qin Hao's thoughts. Unfortunately, Mujan was from the Mu clan. "Open." Wuck let out a low shout and completely entered into battle mode. A brilliant golden lotus appeared under his feet, and, as the petals unfolded, it was like a blossoming divine sword. Borrowing swords from the heavens was the southern region's sword sect's secret art. Just now, he had gathered thousands of sword intents together and activated it with his secret art. Even so, it couldn't withstand a single sword from Mujan, so one could imagine how strong his opponent was. Finally serious? Mujan saw the sword lotus under Wuck's feet and silently nodded. This lotus should be his opponent's sword primary soul. At this moment, Mujan's palm let go of the black, demonic sword. Layers of light erupted from the demonic sword, and each layer of light separated, turning into a pitch-black sword, and arranged itself in front of him. Mujan pointed his finger forward, and in the void, streams of black swords whistled through the air and fell towards the figure standing in the middle of the sword lotus. Controlling sword calamity. Wuk shouted. The fluttering sword lotus closed, and the golden petals connected seamlessly, wrapping him inside. It was like a golden cocoon, and the light it emitted was indestructible. 3 vanishing shadows, sword calamity. The first calamity, controlling sword. Dong, dong, dong. Terrifying sounds of impact kept exploding on the golden sword cocoon, shaking the dojo crazily. The black swords eroded the golden sword cocoon, like huge black spots remaining there. But in the end, they couldn't completely destroy it. Punishment, sword calamity. Wuk's shout came from the space, and then the closed sword lotus suddenly bloomed, and streams of sharp sword light flew out, dense and swift, turning into a surging great path sword river, surging and unstoppable, and drowning Mujan. Mujan held the black demonic sword with both hands. His eyes turned completely red as his black hair danced wildly in the wind. Terrifying black aura emanated from his body as he swung his sword at the river of swords. The sword actually cut the river of swords in half, splitting it into 2. The 2 streams blasted out in opposite directions, crashing into the barrier. Mujan stood at the fork of the river of swords. His body was as steady as a rock, unmoving. Boom, boom, boom. The shocking sound shook the barriers set up by the Heavenly Luin elite violently. Under the impact of Wuk's sword will, the barrier set up by the Heavenly Luin elite was deformed, showing signs of breaking. This made the Heavenly Luin elite, who set up the barrier, look extremely embarrassed. What a powerful attack of the sword principle. The Pang clan leader was extremely shocked. An 8th level nirvana could shake the divine path, but he didn't have this ability. These 2 geniuses are rare in the world. Many of the Pang clan's higher-ups trembled. Either Wuk or Mujan could defeat the Pang clan leader. In other words, either of these 2 had terrifying combat strength that could massacre the central continent. Whoosh! Right at this moment, the surging river of swords vanished, and the extremely intense battle scene suddenly stopped, causing everyone to be caught off guard, causing everyone to be speechless and reveal puzzled expressions. Everyone looked over and found that blood was slowly seeping out of the corner of Mujan's mouth, and his aura instantly weakened. What's going on? The Mu clan's elites were extremely shocked. Mu Bai's face sank in an instant, as if a layer of frost had formed, and became extremely cold. Although he didn't know the reason, he could see that Mujan had lost. What sword technique is this? The demonic sword in his hand slowly disappeared, and Mujan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He looked forward, and his face showed some discomfort. Just now, his soul seemed to have been cut into several pieces by his sword. It was a sword technique that he couldn't resist at all. You want to know? The sacred sword lotus dissipated from under Wuk's feet. He smiled at Mujan and said, I won't tell you, unless you become my sword attendant for 3 years. Chapter 2029. A sword attendant was a servant who held the sword for their master. They were always close to their master and would follow him wherever he was called. Generally speaking, only those seniors with unfathomable cultivation in the academies, institutions, and enormous orthodoxies would accept a sword attendant. To put it nicely, a sword attendant was an apprentice. To put it bluntly, it was equivalent to a servant, but with a slightly higher status. Mu Bai was the young master of the Mu clan in Rikugenji. His cultivation was in the Heavenly Wheel realm, and he had saved Mujan's life. To repay his kindness, it was fine to be his sword attendant. On the other hand, Wuk and Mujan were in the same realm, and the gap between their strengths wasn't that wide. In fact, their strengths were very close, but he actually asked Mu Zhan to be his sword attendant. If it were anyone else, how could they not be angry? It was simply a humiliation. Not to mention, Mu Zhan was Mu Bai's sword attendant. This was digging a corner. How dare you? Mu Yao stood up. His eyes were wide open as he pointed below and shouted. Qin Hao smiled. Wuk had just activated the Sword Emperor's sword will and released one sword's 7 kills to win against Mu Zhan. Since he won, of course, he was qualified to teach him. It wasn't shameful to be Wuk's sword attendant. Of course, it was better to be Qin Hao's sword attendant. He could also teach Mu Zhan. Think about it. I never teach my sword arts to others. You are honored to be the second. Wuk said. The first was Qin Hao. It was obvious that Wuk approved of Mu Zhan. The training hall became very quiet. Mu Zhan's eyes were a little confused. He lowered his head slightly, as if he was thinking about whether he should be a sword attendant of a sword cultivator of the same realm. Mu Zhan, come back! Mu Yao shouted. He would never allow his young master's sword attendant to become someone else's subordinate. Mu Zhan stood there without moving. After a while, he turned around and looked at the ancient building. His eyes fell on a figure. Mu Zhan, you have followed me to cultivate the way of the sword for many years. You were groomed by me. Although you are about to forge the heavenly wheel and step into the divine path, I may not be able to teach you too much. However, my father and the uncles in the clan can continue to guide you. There are many extraordinary sword techniques in the Mu clan that you have yet to learn. Mu Bai said gently. What she meant was that Mu Zhan still had a lot of room to rise in the family, and he didn't need to follow an outsider to cultivate. Mu Zhan didn't say anything. He kept staring at Mu Bai, his eyes flickering slightly. From the bottom of his heart, he didn't want to leave her so easily. After all, they had lived together for so many years. However, the sword strike, just now, was so mysterious that it evoked his strong desire to cultivate. I have already set up a banquet. Why don't you and the seniors of the Tian Ho divine world? Before Pang Clan leader could finish, Mu Bai interrupted him coldly. No need. 1,000 cups are not enough when you meet a bosom friend. Save it for the people of the Tian Ho divine world. Mu Zhan, why are you still not coming back? Mu Yao said. Mu Zhan clenched his fists. He seemed to be struggling in his heart. Don't worry about him. If he wants to come, then come. If he doesn't, let's pretend that there is no such person in the Mu clan. Let's go. Mu Bai's body glowed with sword radiance. He turned into a beam of divine light and directly broke through the clouds from the ancient building. Then, sword radiance flew into the sky one after another. It seemed to be done on purpose. Before the experts of the Mu clan left, they completely unleashed their cultivation. Waves of powerful divine Tao pressure made Pang clan leader and the others tremble violently. Master Yu also left silently. He merged with the flying swords in the sky. But before he left, he took a deep look at Xiao Han. He seemed to have an idea, but he had been away for too long. He really did not have the time to waste. You're Shou Wuk, right? Mu Zhan looked at Wuk and asked. Wuk nodded. If you want to go to the sword world to forge the heavenly wheel, we will have a chance to meet again. At that time, I will have another chance to learn from you. Goodbye. Although Mu Zhan hesitated, he finally chose to return to the Mu clan's team. He turned into a black sword radiance and soared into the sky. What a pity, what a pity. Qin Hao looked at the sky reluctantly. He really felt sorry. He values Mu Bai very much. Zine said, what a pity. He doesn't take him seriously. Isn't it a pity? Qin Hao kept shaking his head. Perhaps in Mu Zhan's heart, he treated Mu Bai as his elder brother and master. He was full of respect. But what about Mu Bai? He knew that Mu Zhan was intoxicated by Wuk's sword and yearned to learn the other sword art. Even though he knew this, he still insisted on stopping Mu Zhan's thoughts. Wasn't this the same as killing someone else's dream? You two brats are birds of feather. What are you hiding in your hearts? Can't I see that you are more sinister than Mu Bai? Zine scolded Qin Hao with a smile. However, he also agreed with Qin Hao's idea. Sigh, everything was fine. Look at this. Patriarch Pang was full of helplessness. Now that everyone was gone, He had entertained Mubai's group for many days, but he did not get any benefits. What's wrong? Does Patriarch Pang not welcome us? Zine said. No, 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 that's not what I meant. Seniors, please come in quickly for the banquet. Patriarch Pang quickly smiled. They had lost an important guest from the Mu clan, but at least the mighty figures of the Heaven Wall realm were here. The group chatted and laughed as they followed the people of the Pang clan into the Pang residence. Chapter 2030. Wooling Chinese Network Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The seamless domain, Rikujinji, and the true Dragon Sword world are ruled by godlords, and they have absolute authority to kill. The Seamless Sword world originated from an academy known as the Seamless Academy. A major power from the academy ascended, and his heavenly wheel gathered the will of the heavenly Daos, expanding his divine spark and becoming a godlord. Thus, the Seamless Sword world was born, Zine said. The three sword worlds were fundamentally different. Although they all had godlords, Rikujinji and the true Dragon Sword world had their own clans as their core. All power was concentrated in the hands of the most powerful member of the clan. It was somewhat similar to the imperial power of the mortal realms. The Seamless Sword world was different. It was more like a holy land for spreading the Tao. Unless something special happened, the godlord of the Seamless Sword world wouldn't pay any attention to the affairs of the world. From the looks of it, the Seamless Sword world seems to have more freedom, Qin Hao said. What's the difference in the direction of the Tao of the sword? Wuk asked. Zine didn't immediately answer. Instead, he turned to Wuk and said, during the Kunlun Flourishing Sea incident, the two of you discussed the Tao of the sword with Lu Qiu and Long Miao. Tell me, what's the difference between their sword intents? Wuk and Qin Hao exchanged glances. They said in unison, intent and body. That's right. Zine nodded in satisfaction. Lu Qiu's sword intent is more focused on the Tao of the sword. Compared to Long Miao's, his sword intent is stronger. The true Dragon God clan, however, is formed from monsters. Their innate talents cannot be changed. It's not just the Dragon clan. All the cultivators of the true Dragon Sword world are more skilled in body arts. In truth, Rikujinji and the true Dragon Sword world had more humans than monsters. However, there were also many humans with powerful bodies who lived in the true Dragon Sword world. This was because the environment there was more suitable than Rikujinji. Qin Hao let out a sigh of relief. He thought back to the scene at Seven Sword Mountain. Lu Qiu and Lu Qiu had fought for the Seventh Peaks. Lu Qiu's translation. Lu Qiu's art translation, no wonder. It turned out that the direction of the heavenly Tao of the two worlds was different. However, this did not mean that Long Miao would definitely lose in a real fight. The dragon race was better at physical skills. If they fought with sword skills instead of sword intent, Lu Qiu might not have the upper hand. Rikujinji is more suitable for you to cast the Sky Wheel, Qin Hao said to Wuk. Wuk's swordsmanship leaned more toward the realm of will rather than the domineering physique. You're still as carefree and unrestrained as ever. Zine cupped his hands in greeting. Not at all, not at all. Everyone, please come in. Servants, prepare the wine. Senior Crane pulled Zine's arm and walked with him in a very enthusiastic manner. At the rear, Qin Hao and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. At first, they were worried that there would be too many accidents and that their relationship might have become distant. Now, it seemed that they were overthinking. Supreme Crane's image was better than expected. Stepping into the Crane estate, the environment was elegant and unique. There were many pavilions and rare plants everywhere. From this, it could be judged that Supreme Crane's conditions were not bad. Brother Zine, we have not seen each other for more than 10,000 years. I originally thought that it would be difficult for us to meet again. What wind has blown all of you here today from the Kunlun Sea? In the main hall, Supreme Crane spoke and personally poured wine for Zine Clan Lord. To be honest, Brother I have a junior who is about to forge the celestial wheel. Because he cultivates the sword Tao, he came to the seamless world, Zine replied. I see. Supreme Crane's expression brightened. His gaze swept around the people in the main hall and finally fell on Wuk. Well, 8th Order Nirvana, and the precepts are about to be perfected. The next step is indeed to forge the celestial wheel. Senior, you have sharp eyes. Wuk spoke. He was slightly surprised. He had deliberately concealed his aura, but Supreme Crane still saw through him at a glance. No wonder Supreme Crane was a sword god of the great Tao sword realm. My level is just higher than yours. Everyone, there is no need to be reserved. Please drink this cup. Supreme Crane raised his cup and toasted. Everyone followed suit. Brother my junior's talent in the sword Tao is extremely high. I don't feel at ease leaving him in the hands of ordinary celestial wheel experts. I wonder if Brother has any connections with the Academy? Can you open a small door? Zine went straight to the point. Supreme Crane was from the seamless world and had cultivated to the sword god level. With his network, he should have some connections with the Academy. This, Supreme Crane's smile froze, and he revealed a troubled expression. He said, I'm not afraid of Brother Zine's joke. Among the many celestial wheel experts in the seamless world, my strength is hardly presentable, especially in the Academy. The Academy stands at the core of the divine region, the sacred ground of the divine master's orthodoxy. It's not a place for a nobody like me to set foot in. Hearing this, everyone in the Kunlun Sea was shocked. The 3 lines Supreme Crane was referring to was the celestial wheel of time's veins. Only those who had cultivated the divine path for more than 30,000 years were qualified to set foot in the Academy.